Welcome to your doom.
Oh God.
Let's try that
What's
again.
up, folks? This is the Welcome to Your Doom Show. I'm Justin,
My name is Atul Kachru.
and we have a special guest today with us. Antoine, you have returned again since what was the last one that you were with us for? I think it was
I think it was
you were
Spider-Man.
definitely with Spider-Man, but I think that you did one after that too. Weren't you with us?
No, I think
No,
it was
it's
the
just
Spider-Man
Spider-Man.
Far From Home.
It was just a really long episode. So so maybe that's why you feel that way.
You know what it was? We did the animated Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles
Yes,
with
and
my
I
brother.
messaged you after that.
Yes, and the reason I'm associating you guys was like because I think we only did 2 recordings in that space, and it was you and my brother, so that's why
Yeah.
I'm associating it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think-
man, it's good to
I
have you back.
I think we
Oh,
recorded
happy
that. I think we recorded that TMNT episode in the same at your parents' place too.
Yes,
Like it was
yes,
the same.
yeah.
Like we were downstairs.
Yeah,
It was the same. It was the same setup. Antoine, what's up, man?
Ah, man, just living that COVID life.
Yeah, seriously, seriously, like the rest of us. What have you been watching, reading, listening to? What's been on? Like, I mean, you're I guess with the COVID life, you're able to. There's a larger intake of nerd content. Is that right? Is that true?
I've kind of been, yeah. Short answer, yes. Short answer, yes. I just haven't been reading much, and that's my New Year's resolution or New Year's goal, whatever the fuck you want to call them now.
Yeah.
It's to start reading more. So my wife got me some books that I haven't cracked the spine yet on, but
Is it like
Or-
are you trying to read like fiction, nonfiction? Is it a type of thing, or is it just getting back into
just getting back
groove?
into reading again.
Okay,
So she bought me.
alright.
She purposely bought me like 3 Spider-Man books. Like,
Yeah.
So she's like, oh, here's 3 Spider-Man books. I know you'll read them. At least you'll
Yeah.
open them. If I give you a Stephen King book, you're not going to open it. But if I give you
Oh,
these, you're
that's
gonna
funny.
open it.
That's so funny. It's like that's how you lure someone back into reading. It's like here's Spider-Man books, and we will start from there, and then we'll go from there. Baby steps.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I cracked the spine on one, but I haven't really gotten really into it. I read like the first chapter, so I'm not going to count that as reading yet.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
But
each their own. Yeah.
shows, TV
Yeah.
shows, we've been consuming so much, like
Yeah.
everything. A lot of comedy recently, just to kind of get your mind away from everything, just kind of shut your mind off.
Sure. Yeah.
And my wife and I are going through the whole MCU all over again because she never
You
got to
Oh,
she never got to go all the way through it. It's like she picked pieces out and came to me on certain days and whatever, but she didn't watch all of them. So right now we're going through phase 1. We're at Avengers. We're gonna watch that tonight, actually.
nice.
So we can watch Avengers 1 together, and then we're gonna start phase 2 tomorrow.
That's wild, man. You're not the first one in like recently to say that they're doing this. Like I feel like I missed a memo or something like that. Because like there's a few other folks that are doing it. Some coworkers are doing that, and even my wife Shugo, she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna start and watch the MCU from kind of like the beginning." And I'm like, "What's going on?" Yeah, I missed a meeting or something. I don't know what's going on.
You missed the memo, bro. Like
Yeah,
it was a mass email. I'm sure you were on the trail. I can double check and see if you're on it.
No, Antoine, I'm a DC fan. I don't get those memos, bro.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
Right.
But
Forgot, you're undercover. You're
I'm
like
undercover.
Justin when
Exactly.
he came to my house. He had on both shirts.
Yeah.
He didn't know what he was walking into, so he wore a Marvel shirt and a DC shirt.
But you know what's funny about that is that today we are going to talk about the progenitor of like the MCU.
What word
I
is
guess.
that? What are you doing? Don't use
Progenitor.
words like progenitor.
That's a
I'm not
Harvard
even
word.
sure I'm using that right. So let's just go with it and pretend I'm smart.
Sounds
yeah,
like another gender.
I didn't say progender.
That's what I
Progenitor.
thought you said at first.
No. Yeah, we're going to be talking about the original Blade from Stephen Norrington, starring Wesley Snipes. Was released in 1998, so kind of not the first. I'm not sure if it's the
I think
first
it's one of
Marvel
the first.
theatrical films, because like Howard the Duck came out at some point.
Yeah,
too. So I'm not-
Howard the Duck. There was a couple of old Captain America films.
Yeah, there
Late
were.
80s, early 90s.
Punisher came out. Dolph Lundgren, right?
Dolph Lundgren's did
Yeah.
before
yeah,
that
yeah,
too.
yeah.
But
I get-
Blades
yeah.
was really the first big theatrical release that was successful, I believe. I don't know.
I guess you could say that probably like big successful Marvel like film, I guess.
I think so.
Is there I'm just curious, Antoine, like what have you seen lately that you've liked before we jump into Blade? Because I'm just kind of curious. Like what have you seen lately that you're kind of like want to call out and be like, this is a good thing. You guys should check this out.
If you haven't watched WandaVision, watch WandaVision.
WandaVision. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a
WandaVision.
couple of episodes with Shagu. And it looks like it's got that clean production. Like I don't know how to say this, but it's a very clean production value. It felt a lot like The Mandalorian in that
Yes.
way. Like
Yes.
it's very, very polished, the whole thing, you know.
Mhm.
Cool. Yeah. So
definitely
WandaVision.
recommend that. WandaVision was, my wife and I watched that together. That was one of the ones that we had to watch. Like I had to wait for her.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to catch up. So
Right.
Yeah.
got released on Fridays. I'm sitting here in my office. I got a little TV up here. I can watch it. But she's like, no, wait for me. So that's every Saturday morning. No, if I'm gonna call out anything, it would be WandaVision for sure. You guys already talked about it. The Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. For
Sure. Yeah.
That's something you definitely have to watch if you haven't watched it yet.
Hmm.
No, those two are the ones that stand out the most for me. Anything else, I probably forgot about it, but
Cool,
those two, if you haven't watched any of those two, you definitely are missing out.
I'll second WandaVision as well. It starts off really, really weird and interesting. Kind of goes into a different, like it's got kind of peaks and valleys to it. It starts off at a high level for me, kind of goes down and then back up throughout the series. But it's ultimately it's neat. It's a neat show that did a lot of different things, and it was kind of neat the way that it took its inspirations from different types of sitcom genres and eras. So it was neat to see how they played it. And it was, I don't know, I don't want to give away too much, but it was ultimately, I feel like you'd like it. I haven't started watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier yet.
Yeah, I watched the first episode of that. That's why I haven't recommended it yet, because I only watched the first episode.
How did you like the first one though?
I found it pretty good. It was a good
Okay.
start. The last scene of the first episode, I was kind of like, we're already doing this. I was kind of like, oh, we're already stepping into that.
Jumping
realm.
in. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, we're jumping in both feet first. Like,
Okay.
we didn't even get our toes yet. You just right into it. So I was like, okay.
That's all right. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. They
I'm
only
alright with
got
it too.
8 or 10 episodes that they're playing with. So the sooner they start off, the better.
Yeah.
Cool. That's good.
Cool, man.
Yeah, I've been interested in, because I like the Captain films for me of the whole. In terms of just all three of them being something, like every one of them has hit home with me. The Iron Man ones, some are a little bit first one's the penultimate, but like the other two are kind of hit or miss for me for some in some degrees. But like Thor films are mixed. There hasn't really been any new Hulk ones, and then you've got a bunch of one-shot ones, and all the Avengers ones are very hit or miss too.
Yeah.
But the Captain America ones were all slightly different, and they were all good for me, at least. So seeing these one, like seeing Winter Soldier and Falcon together, like those are two characters that are playing in that space now that I've already liked too. I think Anthony Mackie is an excellent actor, and I think that he is a very fun character in Falcon. And what's his name? Sebastian Stan is Bucky, I think. That's the actor's name.
That's his name. Yeah.
And he plays that character pretty well too. But I like, you could see the clash in Civil War between the two characters, and I feel like you're gonna get kind of a fun buddy cop type of thing going on in a world that's bigger than just a buddy cop kind of scenario. So I don't know. I'm excited to see it, basically.
Yeah. I'm just happy to see Anthony Mackie in something where he is finally a star character. Like he's the man, not a side star, not a co-star. He's the key guy in the storyline. So I'm just happy to see him step outside of that shadow of somebody else. And being a person of color, I'm not going to try and play that card, but I'm going to say, like, I'm glad that he's out there and doing something else other than sitting behind somebody else. Because like I think the last thing I saw him in was The Banker, and he's behind Samuel Jackson. It's on Apple TV.
Okay. Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the last thing I saw him, and that's a really good movie too. But like again, he's another side character.
Mhm.
You know, he's a co-star where I'm like, he could have led this movie and Samuel could have taken a backseat. Like they could have reversed the roles and it would have been the same, that good of a movie still.
He's actually a main in a couple series on Netflix right now I haven't seen. It's the second season of whatever Joel
Joel
is that
I was gonna
Altered
say
Carbon?
McKinnon,
Altered Carbon or whatever it's called.
Altered
I think so.
Carbon,
I think
yeah.
he's the lead in the second season, and then there's another one that's out now, and I don't know the name of it, but I know I've seen his face on it. So, I mean, he's getting starring roles, just right now not in big box office films yet. But I'm hoping that's what this leads to, because Falcons, I don't know. I really liked this when they introduced him in Winter Soldier. I thought he was great. Just the scenes with him in Evans were, anyways.
On your left.
On your left. That's it. Big, such a, oh man, now I'm flashing back to Endgame. That was such a good moment. On your left.
On your left.
It's interesting you mention Anthony Mackie kind of like headlining movie, because I recently saw something he was in, and he's basically two leads to that movie, but there's a heavy focus on him. It's a movie. The movie's called Synchronic, and it's I think it's out now, but I'd say kind of like science fiction thriller. In very, very interesting premise. It's from these two directors that have directed two other very interesting existential science fiction kind of films with like some Lovecraftian like elements to them. So that's why I was very excited to see. This is kind of the first movie they got a lot, like it's clear they got a lot more money to do. And it's the first movie that they themselves didn't star in. So I think that the two guys' names are Benson and Moorhead, and they direct, they're writing. I think they're also writing it. They also started the first two movies, I believe, but Synchronic is the first one they got like a big cast, a little bit of money. And it was really interesting to see how creative they could get. It's not a hit on like every level, but it's got a good lead performance from Anthony Mackie. In my opinion, that's something that stood out to me. So if you're looking for something else that he's kind of like, he's headlining, definitely check out Synchronic. If
man, that's my list then for sure.
Cool. All right. I think we can dive right in. What do you guys think? How do you guys feel?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do
it. Guys good? All right. Let's find out why some motherfuckers are trying to ice skate uphill. This is Blade. Like I mentioned, Blade was in 1998. All right. But this character was created in 1973 by Marvel Comics writer Marv Wolfman, which is just a great name. I love this guy, and he's done a lot of stuff. He's created a lot of characters. And artist Gene Colan. Colan. Sorry, I just made myself laugh because I'm a fucking child. He was a supporting character in a 1970s comic called The Tome of Dracula. And I don't know if you guys have actually seen some of these panels for where he's first introduced. He looks much different than the Wesley Snipes Blade, but it is him essentially fighting Dracula. So you've got this like really old character, and a little bit of I just wanted to give a couple of like little tidbits of like the making of this movie. Like Wesley Snipes was trying to get Black Panther made in the 90s.
Yes, he was.
And he just couldn't do it. And I also remember him trying to work on Luke Cage as well. Like those two properties, I feel like he may have flip-flopped between the two, but Black Panther, he may have gotten a little further along on that process, but could never push it over the edge. So then this character of Blade comes up. David Goyer writes the script for this movie, and Wesley Snipes signs up to play this character. But this character doesn't have like this crazy like following. He's not a super popular Marvel character. So they really just, they modernized him. They're not beholden to any kind of like fan baggage, I guess you could say. So then they really just like, they changed a lot of things about him, and they modernized him, and they were able to have that sort of creative control. So, this movie is the movie that they kind of came up with. So 1998, I would have been 14 when I saw this movie for the first time. How old were you guys when this movie came out?
You're gonna make me do quick math now, Rob?
Yeah. Sorry.
I would have been 13.
Yeah, I was around 13 or 14. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So like basically like teenagers, like young teenagers when this movie came out. I'm just curious, like Antoine, do you remember the first time you watched this movie?
I do remember the first time I watched this movie.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I went to the theater to watch this movie.
Oh, you went to the theater?
I went to the theater to watch this movie.
No
we used
way.
to go to theaters, you know.
I remember that. Yeah, that's right.
Went to the theater to go watch this. I went with my boy. I think I went with my buddy Dwayne, my buddy Ryan, and my buddy Brandon. There was always us four.
Yeah. Full roster.
Yeah.
Like it.
We went and saw it, and I was just in like, man, it was just first off, it was rated R, so I had to get someone else to buy my ticket.
Yeah.
So
that's the other interesting thing about this. It is a rated R film.
Rated R.
So
I had to get someone else to buy my ticket. And lucky for me, we at the AMC on Courtney Park. And,
Courtney Park.
They had that weird setup where the ticket taker is like right in the middle, like right when you walk in, and then once you pass them, it's free reign. Go to any theater you want.
Yeah.
So I just like got someone to buy me a ticket, and then when they asked me for I didn't have an ID. I just said, "Oh, I didn't have my ID today," and I just walked in. And I just went to the theater I wanted to go to. But no, I just remember watching that movie and then just thinking how cool Blade was. Like, how awesome he was. Wesley Snipes did such a great job, and then trying to remember him on how I remember him on the pages, and then also how I remembered him in the animated series for Spider-Man. Because he had a series.
Was that Spider-Man. Out? Was that those episodes you're talking about? Like, I guess it was Morbius, the Living Vampire.
Were out. Yeah, they were already out. Like, I remember.
Interesting.
Those were already out, I think, by then.
It's so strange. You know, I'll tell you why. Actually, I've just figured it out in my head why I think they weren't out. But yeah. So you went to actually see this in the theater. That's awesome. That is awesome. And it was something that you immediately liked. It wasn't something like that you were thinking about or anything that hit you later. It was like an immediate this is dope.
I think what caught me the first was like the fight scenes right away.
Yeah.
Like, the Wesley Snipes fight scenes are just anytime he's in a fight scene, it just so dope.
Yeah.
Like, I can't find another word to just explain and subscribe. Wow.
Describe. Yeah,
that's a note. So thank you for watching us on YouTube. If you please would like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. Yeah. Justin.
Similar story, actually, and it very well might have been Courtney Park that I managed to sneak into. We do the let's buy a ticket for another movie and then sneak into this one, and then
it's a classic move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a big time move.
Antoine, you made it a little hard on yourself. You actually bought a ticket for the rated R movie and then got in, which is, I mean, look,
all you do is ask somebody to buy you a ticket.
Yeah,
that's hard.
Yeah,
that's true.
But then you like you said, you could potentially get carded later when you're going to actually see the movie.
Yeah.
I remember pulling this stunt. I guess the same stunt that you, Justin, had. I can't remember what movie it was, but buying a ticket for one movie and then just like going to see. You know what it was? I don't know if you guys remember this movie. It was The Black Mask with Jet Li. Do you guys recall this film at all?
I do recall that.
I don't remember that, man.
No.
That movie.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a story there, and the movie's it's complete and utter fucking insanity. It's so insane. Anyway, yes. So I very familiar with that maneuver, Justin. But you went to see it in the theater as well. Was that again? Was that kind of like an immediate like, or was that something you kind of took away after a couple of days, or it hit you later?
No, it was an immediate like. I think I fell in love with it. I mean, the movie opens with arguably one of the best opening scenes on fucking film. And it's not only is it one of the best scenes, it's just one of the best action scenes. It comes out guns a-blazing. Yeah. And I realized that Blade is the superpower of not getting any blood on his shit the entire time, despite the amount of like he's punching people covered in blood. His knuckles aren't getting any blood on it. Later in the film, a character explodes in front of him. He goes like this and nothing hits him. No. He remains immaculate throughout the whole film, and in that opening scene where everybody's covered in a shower of blood. I'm pretty sure he was under sprinklers, and for some reason, when he's introduced, he's still not covered in anything.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. We'll actually step through the plot of this movie, but
there's nothing about the plot. The man doesn't get blood on him. I'm convinced. I'm convinced that the Bill Paxton lookalike guy at the beginning of the film grabbed him and there was no blood on him, despite the guy being covered in blood. It's incredible. I don't know how he manages to stay so immaculate, but he does.
Anyways, I'm almost entirely sure it's in his contract. But
so my point was, I like the opening scene.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
there's a few other moments in the film too that really stuck with me. I remember having such a good time with the movie. My only history with Blade as a character, I knew him as a Marvel character. I never read anything about him, but I remembered liking him from the Spider-Man animated series. Granted, in the series, he had a lot more futuristic types of armaments, but I mean, he was still the same. He was a vampire hunter that was a half vampire, and just kind of seemed like a cool character in that. But this movie ramped it up, and you see a lot of visual things in this movie that it's funny that until I started thinking about it today, because I knew we were going to do this podcast, until I started thinking about it today, I started thinking of even more movies that I feel like this movie might have influenced in some ways. And maybe that's a stretch, maybe not. I know Atul and I have had talks about how some comparisons between this and the Matrix series. I'm sure you're going to bring that up.
Yeah.
But also, like, I see comparisons with like John Wick, for instance, and we can dig into that a little bit more. But
absolutely.
Overall, love the movie. I can't remember who I wish I remember who I had seen it with. I think I know one guy, but I haven't talked to that guy in a long time. He's a good guy though. He was a good guy.
I'm sure he's great. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So you guys, here's a weird thing. I didn't go to see this movie in the theater. I actually, I remember seeing trailers for it when it was coming out, and I completely wrote the movie off. I was just like, I'm not gonna watch this.
The trailers were good. What the hell?
No, I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe it wasn't a negative thing. Maybe it was more of like, it's a rated R thing, and I'm not like, I wasn't interested for whatever reason. I can't remember why. I just like, I wasn't interested. What was I watching? I'm not sure what I was watching at the time, but maybe I was in my like arty farty, getting into like arty. I don't know. I was 14. What the hell was I doing? I don't know what I was thinking. It should have been catnip for me, but I actually saw the movie on. I actually saw the movie on VHS.
Blockbuster, huh?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, yeah. Someone bought it for me, actually. So I had like an original copy. Popped it in. Saw the first scene, and I could literally feel like my brain like expanding when the bloodbath scene came on. I'm like, what is this? Like, what is this? Like everything we're talking about, like the soundtrack, the music, the way that the film looked, that sort of like basically Hong Kong action style of like action style, which wasn't common in American films. So I was seeing action that I'd never seen action film like this before. And Wesley Snipes was just so fucking cool, like cool, right? So all of these things kind of like, my brain just kind of like soaked it all up, but I completely missed it in theaters, and that is why I thought that the Spider-Man animated series episodes you guys are referencing had come before the film, because I think I saw those episodes before I saw Blade.
They did come out.
They did.
Sorry. I mean to say after. Sorry, I saw those episodes. Oh, okay. I see what. So yeah, no, never mind. You're right. I did see them before.
If I'm recalling,
I did see
that I know
before.
about this Spider-Man animated series. I think Blade came into the mix in the third, maybe fourth season, and the movie the series started, I want to say, in '94.
Yeah,
it did.
So
no, you're right.
You're
Right.
Close.
Sorry,
it might have been close to around the same time.
No, but
I think it was before.
But at the time, like VHS would have came out, like it would have been like whatever 6 months.
Oh, it would have been well before that.
Yeah, it would have been like 6 months later. So for sure, I don't know what the
Yes.
hell I was thinking. For sure, I would have seen those episodes before the movie came out. But yeah. So I mean, I really want to kind of do this review because this is such a huge movie for me when I was growing up, and then when I like after I saw it, I would be like, I'd recommend to everyone. I'd be like, everybody go watch this movie. They're like, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, that was me until I saw it, and then I loved it. Right. So you guys, you absolutely need to check this movie out. And it's kind of like a big one in my family too, because, that VHS made the rounds, right? Like, and everyone saw it whenever we'd have family get-togethers. Like even my wife, who were family friends, like from way back in the day, and they'd be at some of these family gatherings and stuff like that. She even remembers all of us sitting around the TV watching this movie, like Blade.
So does Nisha.
Yeah, that's right.
Brotherhood of the Wolf.
Brotherhood of the Wolf, Blade,
there was
and
another one too. There was another one that was a common one.
Yeah. So Nisha, Justin's wife, is also like a family friend of mine. So back in the day, at least gatherings that were, she'd be there too, and I'm sure she was one of the people forced to watch Blade.
She doesn't have good things to say about it.
No, she has none. She has no good things to say. It's so funny. I forgot about that she would have been there too when that happened. But yeah, just like it's such a big thing. And then Antoine, when we were doing the Spider-Man episode, we were talking about our favorite like Marvel films, and then you dropped Blade. I'm like, oh god, like when we review Blade, we got to have Antoine here to talk about this. So just a discretion, just to be completely transparent with all of our listeners, this is going to be like a love fest for the first Blade movie, and then we're actually planning to do the other two films as well. So for the second one, and all of for the second one, and third one, hopefully Antoine, you can join us and we can do those as well. But this is going to be a total love fest. But I'm just like, I'm happy to do it because I want to be able to talk about this again. It's been such a long time since I'd seen this movie, so I'm in watching it recently, it really brought back a lot of fun memories. So I was thinking we can jump into the plot and just kind of like work our way through the movie. Does that sound good, guys?
Let's do it.
All right. Immediately off the bat, we get the New Line Cinema logo. Okay, it is
We're
red.
starting with the logo. You were not playing around.
Yeah. No, I'm not playing. No, I know. I'm not playing.
I just already making notes.
The reason I mentioned this is because that was the first thing I noticed when I watched it for the first time, was that the logo was altered to fit the movie. And I don't know if you guys noticed this. Like they do this every once in a while with certain films. They'll change the logo to make it fit the movie, like the Fox logo, for example, on the X-Men movies. I think some of them, when the fade to black happens, the X on Fox stays on the screen for like an extra second or two. So like cool, like custom changes to logos and stuff. So I noticed that right away. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And it's all red. Then we get our opening scene, which and I guess in my mind was like the reason this scene was so amazing to me and like brought in my mind was because there was a lot of like, so I was 14, there's kind of like a lot of, in this whole movie there's a lot of taboo stuff, like not taboo, but like kind of like stuff that I was like, not really, I hadn't seen before, was maybe told that this is strange or like whatever, kind of afraid of what was different, because you've got now I've forgotten her name, but she's actually an adult film star, the girl who's playing the role of the woman who's taking this guy to this party.
Did we see the same film?
Yeah. What?
Just checking.
Well, no, she's actually
this
an
isn't
adult...
Blade a porn parody, right?
No, it's not. No, she's actually an adult film star who they hired in this movie. So she, like, when she brings this guy into, first of all, you're in this like meat packing plant, which is like disgusting.
Are you sure this isn't a porno?
Yeah, that I saw. I'm almost entirely
porn star
sure.
Meat packing district.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
I'll stop fucking with you as you go.
So I guess the point is that there's like, for me, there was kind of like this weird like sensuality that I'd never seen before, right? So like when she goes in, like she immediately starts dancing with another girl instead of her boyfriend, and the whole scene is super uncomfortable. and he's just getting like pushed around or whatever, and then the blood sprinklers come down and it's super, super disgusting. And so I was just like uncomfortable the entire time. I remember watching the movie, I'm just like, what am I going to see next? Like the whole scene builds up to this moment, and then like Blade shows up, and then an action scene that also shows me a ton of shit that I've never ever seen before comes up. So I had this combination of like, this is kind of a weird setup to, like, like again, like not being super familiar with like, girls and sexuality and stuff. And then these two girls start dancing with each other, and then the blood sprinklers come down. And I'm like, oh, this is fucking disgusting. Like, it's all these like feelings mashed together, and then this action scene happens, and I'm just like, I've never seen anything like this before. It was just like mind explosion after mind explosion happening on this thing. Also, I noticed, and I do remember noticing this after I'd seen repeat viewings in the past, but Stephen Dorff is actually in the intro, and I didn't like the Deacon Frost character. He's at the club.
Yes.
In the intro.
That's right.
Yes,
he bumps into him. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, like that was something I don't really remember, but when I was watching it now, I'm like, holy shit, he's there, and I don't remember that happening. But yeah, so we get this big action scene, and we got New Order Confusion, this song that I listened to a ton after watching this movie, the song that they're playing at the club. So how did you guys feel about this action scene? Is there anything you wanted to talk about specifically here?
The unique action is a very big thing in this. There's a couple of moments in it that I remember really, really liking. There was the he like triple uppercuts a guy, and then also sticks he goes boom boom, and then a third time with the spike. The stake. Yeah, the stake. Sorry.
Yeah.
That shot always gets me. I always think that's a great shot. And also when he boomerangs basically his shotgun, not the S blade or whatever, but when he runs out of shells, and then he actually just kind of does this weird like, it's like the police baton kind of swing, but he does it in a way that it ends up or boomeranging it out and trips a guy.
He threw it to trip one dude, and I was like,
he tripped him real good.
I think he was just like, I'm done with this gun. He was bored with this gun. I'm gonna switch to the other gun, and then he got bored of that gun, and then he's like, I'm gonna switch to my sword, because he's just trying to keep himself on his toes. I guess.
There was also, and this is super awful, but that moment where he takes out his sword, where he's out of all of his armaments and he's down to his sword, and he does the line on the ground. That always played really, really well with me. I always thought that was a really cool
dude.
scene.
I fucking love that.
To the point, and Antoine, I think you'll appreciate this, to the point where I actually incorporated it into my basketball game. If there were people that wouldn't step up on me, if I had an open shot, I would fuck with them and take my leg, or take my foot and draw a line in front of me, and then I'd shoot. I wasn't a good enough shooter to justify doing that, but when I went in, it felt pretty good. So I can't remember if that movie was, or if Blade was the inspiration for that, or if I'd seen it somewhere else and just started copying somebody, but I'm pretty sure I think I got it from. Anyways, long story short, I really like that part of the scene. It was just it's just another ounce of style that you don't see in these types of action scenes that often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm still waiting for an explanation from somebody about how he had no blood on him. That's all.
Yeah. So I don't think he's actually in the room when the sprinklers goes off. I bet you he was coming in
the doorway. I think he's in the doorway.
Yeah, he's in the door. He was.
He brought an umbrella.
Antoine, anything about this scene that you want to chat about? Anything? Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. The cinematography for the scene where his mother is giving birth to him.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, I skipped over that.
That kind of trips me up a little bit too, because I like the way that was shot. They give a glimpse of her name. You see who she is, because she does eventually come back into the story after later on in the movie.
Played by Sana Lanthan or Lanthan. I think that's her name, but she was the girl from
Love and Basketball.
And Alien versus Predator.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's the lead in Alien versus Predator. Yeah.
She was the only likable character in that movie.
Yeah. Look, we should talk about that movie sometime. But anyway, yeah.
But then to go back to that, now to go into the scene that were the opening scene, like the true opening scene.
Yeah.
The blood spray, like everyone partying, and that scene always gets me. Every single time I watch this movie, I tell everybody, don't sit down. You can get up, like if you have to go to the washroom or go get a snack or whatever, or refill your drink. Wait till the scene is over.
Yeah.
Like then leave.
Yeah. Yep.
And then like again, like I said before, the fight sequences in this, like I don't think Wesley had a stand-in at all for any of these fight scenes. I think he helped choreograph, if not all of these fight scenes. He definitely had a big hand in it. And
yeah, certainly plays to his strength. And he's fast. I think that was the one thing that struck me about Wesley Snipes in any of his films when he in any of his choreography is that he was extremely fast with his hands. Mm-hmm. So they play into that big time, like in this movie, I think. The like you mentioned the cinematography, Stephen Norrington, a little bit on the director. This guy came out of special effects and like makeup effects and stuff like that. And he had directed a movie earlier, and then this was his second feature, but his first big feature. Very, very young director. Mm-hmm. And everything the commentary on the DVD and like anything I've read online is that he was tough to work with because he was like a perfectionist. But he's also him and David Fincher, I think, were friends because David Fincher was supposed to direct this movie and he dropped out and he ended up directing something. I think he might have switched over to Fight Club. But that's what we're talking about here is like this like level of visionary. I think that Stephen Norrington is tough to work with, but it's so clear. He had an absolute crystal clear idea of what he wanted this movie to look like. Yeah. It's this like urban, it's this urban sort of dirty, grimy, gritty look to the movie with the fast-paced, like East Asian style, like of action choreography. Like some little things that I noticed, like the camera shake. There's a lot of like camera shake that make these moves feel like they hit so hard, especially that dude who gets the stake in the chin and gets stuck to the roof. Like when he does that, like all the sound editing, the way it looks, the hand somewhat handheld style of the camera, like the camera shake, everything adds to that. And not at no point in this action scene was I like disoriented about what's going on, who was moving where, who are. Mm-hmm. So even with a lot of this like hyper, like there was, like very well edited scene, I still got all the geography of like where these folks are and what's happening. So that girl's name is Tracy Lords, the actress who's playing this woman who's bringing this dude in. So the way she gets it also was another thing where I remember watching it for the first time. I'm like, what the hell am I watching? This is insane. I don't know if you guys remember how she dies. She gets the butt of a shotgun in the box and then gets her like head blown off with the shotgun.
So that one always confused me. And here's why, is that I thought that he tried to shoot her.
Yes. And he wasn't cocked.
Or really? Words.
Yeah. Have you heard the immature jokes I started with around porn?
I'm not gonna run from this, man. I'm feeding the beast at this point.
He's jumping right into it.
I'm feeding the beast.
Jesus. Anyways, yeah, it seems like it's a misfire or it's not loaded, but then he hits and does. I was just really confused. I thought he was out of bullets.
Yeah,
but
I was confused about that too.
Still had one. That always stuck with me as a weird choice. I remember seeing that and thought that was weird.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But the way she goes is it's spectacular. Like the way she, I'm like, what? Why? Like why? This whole and I guess that's my general sentiment on this movie is like it takes these crazy risks, and we'll get into some of these later. But yeah, actually, you know what? It makes more sense that it was a misfire because then he wouldn't have to load, like, cock the shotgun again. He would just have to pull the trigger again. Maybe it worked. I don't know. Yeah. But he gun butts her in the box and blows her head off. It's nuts. It's totally nuts. And what else about that scene? the sword fight. Oh, and the sort of the vampire kills. So like every vampire movie has to kind of deal with certain mythology when they're introducing like their version of the vampire. So you got like, you know, are you doing the stakes and holy water crosses? Are you bringing in all the religious stuff, the Christian religious stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Are you building your own mythology? When vampires die, what happens to them? You know, like making these decisions, these creative decisions. How do you guys think about these vampires, and in particular how they die?
How they go to dust?
Yeah, because it's, you know, like every I feel like every show or movie has to make a choice on that, and I really, really, really loved the choices they made for like how they kind of very quickly, very rapidly combust, basically. I guess
if we look at it two different ways, like I think there's two different kinds of deaths for these guys. There's the ones who are the originals.
Yes.
I'll call it the originals, and then they light up on fire. Like he lit up like a goddamn fucking Roman candle. And like
I was gonna say that.
Shit,
I thought that
blew up.
Yeah, I thought that might have been because it was sunlight that they were killing him with.
Maybe, but like the way he burnt up was kind of weird. Huh?
Sorry.
Just because it was Udo Kier, man. Udo Kier, when Udo Kier finally bites the, you know, like dies. Is he gonna go out like that? You think he's gonna be on his deathbed and he's just gonna explode?
Absolutely,
burst into flames and then blow up.
That seems like a thing that he would do. That guy's no joke. Anyway, yeah. So you were saying, so you had this one type of death, and then you have
I think the ones who were like not originals, who were turned, turned to dust.
Right.
So
right.
And I think they did a really good job with the amount of technology that they had back in that day. Like, let's be completely honest. That is, you watch it now and you're like, whoa, that is really bad CG. But when you think about it, back then you're like, how'd they make that guy just disappear into thin air?
Yeah. Let's talk about that, the CG a little bit, because there's the film opens with this scene, and there's a lot of combusting vampires, basically, and I actually think it's aged pretty well, all things considered, in my opinion, because I've seen movies from the 90s or that period that have aged like horrifically. Like some like CG has actually aged so poorly. There is CG in this franchise that has aged so intensely poorly, and we'll get to that when we talk about Blade 2. But in this movie, in general, I thought that the CG was tastefully done, except for one or two scenes involving blood pouring from a ceiling, which just looked like really, truly awful. But that's kind of my general sentiment on the effects. So I'm just a little more lenient than you are on this, but I think that it's aged relatively well compared to other movies of its time.
I think the people going like the vampires blowing up into dust is 100%. I'm okay with that. That aged really, really well. But the final fight sequence, you know, with that cuts him in half, and then
oh boy.
Boy. Yeah. That's the stuff that does not age very well.
Yeah.
But the thing that the thing I don't think they had completely figured out then is they could make the animations and the actual dissolves look really good. Making the actual models look good in the environments, look like they seamlessly are integrated with the environments themselves, was the tricky part, because the CG and the animation looks pretty good. It's just that some more care to make things look like they were actually in the space would have gone a long way. And they might, it's hard to do that back then. The technology we have now to actually light things in a way that makes it look like it's there is probably leaps and bounds beyond what was available and what was possible then. The amount of computations required to actually make something look really good and do more realistic light is very expensive. And I don't know how much possibility there would have been to be able to do that in 1998. That's a lot of what makes things look kind of janky. The animation in here is actually quite good for the time period.
I agree. In particular, I would call out, there's one guy who I think jumps over him and he gets sliced and his body lands on a railing. So he's disintegrating as his back is sort of bending. And I'm like, that just the level of interaction, because Blade is moving through these guys, and not all of these. So here's another thing, and I can talk about the scene for fucking hours. So we should probably move on after this. But it's the level of interaction, because not all of the effects are front and center. Blade's shooting people, he's cutting people up, but people are disintegrating off camera, over here, over there, and he's right in the middle of it, and he's moving through it. And that level of interaction and camera movement and stuff makes things feel more visceral and real, like for me, like the way when I'm watching it. So even if there is some like the CG doesn't look as great, it's just the surrounding film and how much kinetic energy this entire scene had, where I'm just like I've got like whiplash, when I'm watching this scene. But like I said, I could talk about the scene forever. But two other things I wanted to note. One, probably my single favorite comedic moment in this movie happens here, when he pins Donald Logue's character, who's gone on to
about him for a while.
Who has gone on to quite a ton of success, since that movie has come out. And I really do like him as an actor. But they pin him to the wall, and he does the fist pump when he gets him in the other shoulder, and he pins him up, and he's just like, and I'm like, that wasn't written in the script. No. David Goyer did not write, does fist pump when nails Buddy to the wall. That's like a distinctly, I feel like that's a Wesley Snipes thing. And we'll talk a little bit more about this. Wesley Snipes brings this the Bladeness factor to this movie that's not written, in the script. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I don't know if you guys noticed the cop that comes in when Donald Logue's character is on fire. He just comes in and just seems mildly annoyed that there's a dude screaming on fire in a corner, and he's just like,
put that guy out.
He's like, somebody put him out. Somebody put him out. I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, you just walked in. There's blood everywhere. There is blood everywhere, and there is a guy stapled to a wall on fire screaming. Does not give a fuck. This guy's just like, can somebody just put this guy out, please?
Oh man, that's how you know that he's been at too many of these crime scenes.
Yeah. that guy either needs to retire or go on a long vacation and find out what life is really like, because when that's your reaction to this scene, something's broken in his brain.
Another guy on fire and a bloodbath. Fuck, this is the sixth one this week.
And apparently Stan Lee, that was Stan Lee's cameo that was filmed. He was supposed to be one of the cops that comes in that scene, really? But they ended up cutting it from the movie. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think the Blade movies are the only ones he didn't really actually have full cameos in.
That's right. Yeah. They are.
I don't think he had one in any of them.
No, I don't. Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't think he had a full cameo in any of them. No, did he have one in the third one? I'll have to watch.
Did he? Oh, I'd have to
rewatch it to see. But
revisit that little chestnut later. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so then we jump over to the autopsy scene, where we're introduced to Karen. Now I've forgotten her last name, but she is a hematologist, and they bring in burnt Donald Logue. I think his name is Angel in this movie, potentially. Let's just say that it is. So they bring in Angel, and they have this autopsy scene, and this scared the shit out of me again. The scene made me jump again when he pops up, because I couldn't remember exactly when it happens. And this conversation between them two is so stale and boring. I wasn't exactly sure how long they were gonna let this go until this guy pops up.
So thirsty. She's done with you, bruh. Fuck on, man. She don't want nothing to do with you, bro.
Yeah, and I'm like, you're such a loser. You're such a fucking loser. I'm sure that's what burnt Donald Logue is thinking. He's like, I was gonna take a nap here for a little bit. Yeah, but I need to end this conversation right now. I can't take any more of this.
That guy is the third most unlikable character in this film. Third. I got two more.
Got two more. All right. So autopsy. Oh yeah, and this is another moment where he comes in, he attacks Karen, bites her, and Blade shows up to be like, okay, and he's come to finish this guy off.
Yeah.
The police come in and they shoot Blade, and he takes 4 bullets in the chest. And this is a crazy, again, I know I'm emphasizing this a little bit, but these are things I've never seen before in a movie. You see someone and he takes 4 live rounds to the chest, and in the same shot he speaks back. Like, this is the kind of thing, like special effects and interaction, where I'm like, I have never seen anyone do that. That looks fucking amazing. Like, he got shot in the chest and then he had this reaction, and plus the reaction is fucking absolute gold too. And he's like, yo, motherfuckers, are you out of your damn mind? And I'm like, what the, this is insane. What am I watching? Oh, I lost my shit when he said that.
That is arguably my favorite moment from this whole film. And I'm not even kidding, because I remember dying when I saw that, because Blade, up until that point, and you hadn't seen a lot of him, but you've kind of seen how he is in the trailers. You'd seen him in the opening scenes. He is a man of few words, very stoic. Even in those scenes leading up to that moment, he's not saying a lot. He just lets his action speak for itself. Everything that he says is at a very low tone, very slow, and then all of a sudden he gets shot. Motherfucker, you out of your damn mind? And it's just, it comes off of the cuff in such a way that is so unexpected and
you know, that was
hilarious. Was that?
Definitely ad-libbed. Like,
it seemed like
it is. It is.
Like,
and
is
actually,
it ad-libbed?
I read about that line. Like, I read about it. It was in some like article, and Snipes is like, yeah, we ad-libbed that line, and Stephen Norrington's like, no, we can't use that. And Snipes is like, look, like, you don't get it. This is like it's a cultural thing. It'll work. Like, Norrington, it's going to work. He had to convince Stephen Norrington, and then they ended up using it in the final like cut of the movie. So you've got this. So you got to imagine this. Like, you've got this. What I mean, I think is a visionary director. Unfortunately, hasn't worked too much since then, because the next movie he did was The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Which I like, by the way. I'm not gonna lie. I like that movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's likable stuff in there. 100%.
And I regardless of how you feel about the movie, the experience this guy had on that movie was awful, and he got into huge fights with Sean Connery on that movie, and probably the other cast. He's a perfectionist, and he left the movie. I think somebody else had to edit the movie together or something like that, but he hasn't done a movie since then. He basically like left Hollywood. 2 movies this guy did. Oh, well, two big budget movies, one smaller low budget movie before that. I think it was called Death Machine or something like that. But I think it's a shame. It's a shame. But having said that, you've got this guy, like this perfectionist English dude filming this like vampire action movie. Then you've got Wesley Snipes, who is a producer on the movie, by the way, as well, right? And you've got his like basically cultural input, which this basically white English visual like auteur is just not going to get. But this movie, like, they complement each other so well. Like, they found some middle ground. And I was reading, like, you could tell, like, in like the commentary when Wesley Snipes talks about it, or in any article, but like I haven't seen anything from Norrington. He doesn't really do interviews or anything like that. But you could tell, like, everyone on the commentary, actually, David Goyer is like, Stephen Norrington is a strange man. This is the commentary for the movie. Okay.
He's a strange man.
Yeah. So like, you've got this, like, I think probably tense relationship, but like creatively what came out in the end was a great, not even a compromise. I'd say it's actually like a complementary thing, basically with the style and basically the culture, and they kind of like complemented each other really well. And it's no more evident than in that scene. I think that's one of the great results of that relationship.
I can't believe that was ad lib. That's dope. I like that a lot.
That's a line my dad would use on me when I was a kid. That's why I know it had to be ad libbed, because I was like, no, that's something my dad would say. Motherfucker, you done lost your mind?
Dude, it works so well. Yeah, no, it's great. And also, I think the cops run after that in the next shot. I was laughing this up. Do they turn around and leave?
No, he ends up running.
He ends up running
Ends
like
up
for
running
the.
for the window.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought they like turn around and leave, but that would have made it funnier. But so then we get another thing that I had never seen before. Like, he basically tosses this doctor
and pulls that bitch out the window.
Yo, that is so wild. He must have known that there was a bunch of styrofoam that they had stacked on top of that building, because that's apparently where you stack styrofoam, is on the top of buildings.
Well, yeah, I mean,
styrofoam, like actual foam.
Yeah,
foam blocks.
It was a garbage bin. I feel like that's what he saw,
on the roof
right?
of a building.
No,
There
that
was a
wasn't a
pile of
garbage
boxes.
bin.
There was a pile of boxes.
Recycling bin then,
Yeah,
or something like it was
a
like
pile
a
of
big,
boxes.
it was like
Yeah.
a big recycling bin or something like
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
But yeah, again, another thing that I'm like watching this, I'm like, how's he gonna get out of this one? And he throws her out the window, and I'm like, what am I? This is insane. This is insane.
Dude, that's
The
one of
average
those.
hero would have jumped with her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with her in his arms. He's just like,
The average hero.
get the fuck out of here. I'll be following
This
you.
guy said, "I'm
Hopefully
gonna
you
toss a
may-"
bitch."
He just, dude, I like, even when watching it right now, I'm like, I still took me by surprise. I'm like, I know it's gonna happen. And the other thing was that her the arc she takes, it looks really convincing. I think that actually the effects have aged pretty well there. His jump, not so much. Like his jump, that's a little more purposeful. Like it didn't look as good as hers. Hers had a nice arc to it. His had a weird, the physics didn't look.
From the coat.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Oh, maybe that's what it is. But yeah, so then basically goes to the next scene as she wakes basically goes back to, you know, the Blade Cave or whatever you want to call it, right?
Can we rewind a second?
Yeah.
When he pops her shoulder back into place, she's like, "Oh, my shoulder's dislocated." He's like, "Man,
yeah, that's right.
let's go."
That's right. Yeah.
Stop whining.
Stop crying.
Stop
Bitch.
whining.
Let's
go. And she returns the favor later too.
Yeah, she does.
That, so that does come back. Yeah. So then we end up at the Blade Cave, and we're introduced to two things: his car, which I thought was like super cool. I'm not a car guy by any stretch of the imagination, but that I always liked the utilitarianism of his car, but it also had a very unique look and profile to it. And then we're also in, yeah, the Charger, yeah, exactly. And then we're also introduced to excuse me, Whistler, played by Chris Christopherson, and I just love this guy in this movie. I think Chris Christopherson just absolutely nails this role. After that, anything you guys want to say about Whistler in this scene? I think it
was this the scene where he chases her down when she wakes up?
No, oh, I think that might be the next one.
Yeah,
that might be the next one. But yeah, no, that's a funny one. That's a funny one. Yeah. We go back to the Vampire Council.
Oh yeah.
Actually, after this, and this is the one beef I have with this movie. They didn't do enough with the Vampire Council, in my opinion. I love when there's a little bit of world building, when we get to see like different cultures, whether they're like alien cultures or other cultures on Earth with a bit of like a mystical, mythological twist, whatever it happens to be. I love seeing that stuff. That's why I like the, you know, the Zack Snyder cut. We got to see more of Atlantis. We got to see more of Themyscira, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Here, I really wanted to see, because they make it so interesting from my perspective. You got this council, and it's like everyone's different. You've got like man, the one guy who talks in that scene, he's got tattoos on his head, you know, of all of these symbols. You've got this like you've got you know, like a dreadlocked dude who's like either, you know, maybe he's like, I don't know if he's African or he's Caribbean or whatever. Like there are obviously like factions of vampirism.
Yeah.
Right. And this
whole
whole
cultures
idea
of vampirism. Yeah. Like,
exactly. And then you've got this concept of the pure bloods versus the folks that have turned. Again, never a concept that I had even thought to think of. I'm like, this is fucking gold. It's so gold, but they don't really do anything with it. You're introduced to Dragonetti, the Udo Kerr's character, but they stick with him. They stick with the La Magra thing where Stephen Dorff is this, Deacon Frost is this upstart vampire who's trying to change things and do things differently, but they don't do anything with these other like factions, races, cultures of vampirism. And I was always, when I watched it, when I used to watch when I was younger, I always wanted to know more about that, but they don't really touch on it.
Underworld.
Was that
Underworld? I feel like that whole faction thing is like Underworld, like a spin-off for Underworld. I feel like
yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
when I watched that scene, I see it. When I watched it again this week, I was like, this is Underworld, but I'm watching Blade.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. And I think that's why I kind of have a soft spot for the underworld stuff, because they dig into a lot of that stuff. Yeah, so you find out kind of Deacon Frost is this upstart. He was running the nightclub. They're like, yo, we can't fuck with, like, we can't let people know that we're around. Humans will make things difficult for us, whereas Frost is like, hey, they're our food. Why are we sort of bending and hiding from them? What do you guys think of Deacon Frost as a character, as played by Stephen Dorff?
I think he's short-sighted as a villain. I really think he's short-sighted as a villain. I like my villains to have a little bit of depth. As you can see, like, my office is covered in Joker.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think he was way too short-sighted as a villain. I think they should have given him a little bit more. He needed more oomph for me. Like, for the movie, yeah, he was fine. But I feel like if he was going to continue in any way, shape, or form, they'd have to give him a way better story, give him a little bit more, I guess, more feature set. I want to call it that. I guess more his powers being a little differently because he was turned, and then because he turned and because he was this kind of blood, or whoever turned him, gave him this kind of power. Like, it just felt like he was really shallow. It felt like he was like the special needs kid in the group of the good kid, like the typical kids.
Yeah. Yeah, he did feel a little, he does feel a little plain, but I love the fact that he does get upset when these guys compare, like, your basically your mixed blood versus the pure blood stuff. And I do like the scenes where it's clear that upsets him, that there is this social difference between being born a vampire and being turned. And again, they put it there, they set the plate for that to be maybe more of a motivation, right? Like, they set the plate for it, but they don't do anything with it. It's unfortunate, but I think I get where you're coming from. Justin, any thoughts on Deacon Frost?
He's a douchebag, full stop. I really just, I don't like him. I never really liked him that much as a villain either. I think that I don't know if his vision was short-sighted, but it did seem like he wasn't really, I don't think he had the full scope of what he was actually bringing on. You know what I mean? I don't know. At no point did I think he was a formidable villain for Blade, nor did I think his plan was, I mean, how I don't know, just the fact that all of a sudden they needed Blade's blood too. Like, what are the odds that there's a Daywalker? Is there a prophecy that there's a Daywalker that's just hanging around?
The plot, there's certainly plot holes aplenty in this movie.
And also, things just seemed very, very easy for him. Like, no problem. He can just walk in, grab Udukar, and light him on fire in the sun. No problem. He can walk into the Council of Vampires meeting and take all of them, and everybody's just going to comply. No problem.
Yeah.
At the circle where they're performing the ritual for Lamagra, it's no problem for them to just kill one and be like, just bring another one. Like, I thought those were all of the ones. Like, you should just kill Udukar. Like, you don't have all, you've already lost some of the cards in your deck and you're still losing some.
Yeah.
And for my whole thing is, I thought, like, pure bloods are supposed to be stronger than the ones who return. So why are these pure bloods not destroying these guys with their this outward strength?
Yeah, no, I remember I used to think that as well. Like that not only that social difference, but also, like, do the pure bloods have something going for them that the turned vampires don't? Whether it's strength, whether it's, I don't know what it is, but the way I see that social discrepancy is the same way that as it is, like, let's say in, like, modern times, right? Like, whether it's, like, skin color, whether it's, like, race, or whether it's, like, being, like, female, whether you're like not heterosexual or whatever, there is a difference in social stance, but it's not like, it doesn't result in physicality. It's not like I'm stronger than you because because I feel that you're less. It's purely social, right? So that's kind of how I worked it out in my mind, is that they're not different physically, but that doesn't solve the problem of him being able to just kidnap the entire, like, Shadow Council, who are supposed to be, like, well connected, like vampires running the show, and he's able, this upstart is able to just come in and just basically like kidnap everyone. It is. I was always like, it all just seemed really easy. You're absolutely right. And he's got this computer program that's just running and decoding this like thing. He's like, Udo Kier comes to see him at some point, and this is another favorite scene of mine where he's like yelling at him because he's like, you're trying to look at this La Magra blood god thing, and
dead language.
Deadly.
He says translate it.
Exactly. And Stephen Dorff's actually doing anything. He's just sitting there listening to like, I don't know, I guess like trance music or something like that. And Udo Kier gives him a vicious slap in the face, just an unexpected, just boom, nails him. And they have this weird moment, like it's almost this intimate moment where he just kind of like touches Udo Kier's face, and Udo Kier's looking directly at him, and he says, "You bore me." And that line just kills me every time he delivers it. And the reason I'm saying this, so I went to quick side. I went to a film festival in 2017 called Fantastic Fest in Austin, Texas, and Udo Kier was there, and he was like at these events, and I didn't get to meet him personally, but he was there, and I could hear him talking. I'm like, oh man, this guy. All I could hear in my mind was Dragonetti from Blade whenever he was talking, and all I could hear was his voice. So it was really cool to see that. So to see this moment and to see him in this movie was really fun. But Dragonetti, like, they don't really do anything with the council. It's too bad. Anyway, so Karen wakes up in the Blade Cave, goes and explores and sees some weapons, and we're introduced to the booby trap on the sword, which is dope. I think we could all agree that I quite like this thing, and it comes back a little bit later. But this is when she tries to escape, and Whistler chases her, and Blade drops down from behind her, and
so good.
No noise. Like, it's completely silent. He's completely silent, because it's funny how it's shot. He's completely stands there, and then he crosses his arms, and he has the S blade in one of his hands. He's like, just in case she tries to give me shit, just in case I need to cut this civilian in half. That's right. For no reason. She's trying to get away. S blade. That'll solve the problem. Yeah. Is for anyways, but it's crazy. But yeah, so then they basically come to a decision that they're going to try and save her. They're going to wait a few days for her to figure out kind of like what's happening with her, right? And that's the other thing that they do with the vampire mythology in this movie, is that they're bringing the science into it to mix with the mythology. And vampirism is essentially, or the way they're talking about it, is a disease. So that's another kind of like big modern twist to this, which is something that I hadn't seen before when I had watched this movie. So it's like, they're not sure, is she going to turn or is she not going to turn? In any vampire movie I'd ever seen before that was, if you're bitten, you will become a vampire. There's no like middle ground.
You're either going to die or you're going to become one.
Exactly.
There's no in between.
So this one is like kind of like a wait and see sort of thing. And basically they send her out into the world, and she gets visited by a cop who she thinks is a vampire, but is not. And this scene plays out, and I thought the scene was really funny because Blade is essentially using her as bait to see if the vampires will show up, or send someone to show up to get rid of her, because she knows about them. And so this guy's not a vampire, he is a familiar. And then they introduce this concept of the glyphs, which I also thought was really cool. So basically vampire cattle, I guess is what Blade says. But he also proceeds to destroy Karen's apartment with this guy's face. Like, like it's, and she like, I'm like, wow, it's a lot. But as soon as I started thinking, I'm like, is that really, like, does he need to do that? She asks that. She's like, in the movie, she's like, is this really necessary? After he destroys like her coffee table or something with this guy's face. And I'm like, yeah, dude, chill. You can punch him all you want. Can you just stop breaking all my strength? Shit?
He doesn't need to start putting him through walls and shit. Like, she's not getting her safety deposit back at this point. And that's all Blade's fault. And to make matters worse, he's going to have to rob at least a few people to pay her back, because he clearly robs people for their operation, as he says in this scene.
He takes the watches.
We're not exactly the March Dimes, is what he says.
Yeah.
And he's pissed and he's like, it's fake. That's great. Oh man, no, it was good. It was good. And then they go back out to the car. You see that he's basically pushing blood for the vampires, and they bring in again this more of this practicality. It's like, what would it be like to be a vampire, modern vampire in a city? It's like, well, you'd probably have to run a blood bank or some kind of blood racket in order to keep everyone fed. And so they introduce that. He gets away because she stops him from like basically brandishing his gun, which, by the way, he is assaulting a police officer in public. Not a single person gives a shit. He is just beating the fuck out of this guy.
It's New York City, man. New York City cops, sometimes they deserve it, right?
He's just like, I remember the one scene he like bounces the guy off of the trunk, like he bounces his face off the trunk, and it's his car, right? It's his cop car. It's not like it's somebody else's car. It's his own. It's a cop car with a cop getting completely manhandled, and everybody's like, that's cool. No big deal here.
Blade is a menace to society.
Yeah.
He is brandishing his gun, shooting in broad daylight.
Yeah.
He is almost running. When he was dropping off Karen at her apartment, he almost killed people in his car at least a few times.
That's right.
He's a very bad driver. He is a very bad driver.
He's usually riding a bike, that's why.
That's true. You're right. When he makes that right turn into that alleyway, when he drops her off, there are people like screaming to get out of the way.
He is a dick behind the wheel. That's established throughout this film. Also, I did want to note, second most unlikable character is this cop. He is the worst.
Oh, he's a weasel.
Oh yeah.
He's such a weasel.
Yeah. So his plan was, I'm going to go into this person's apartment, I'm going to shoot them, and that's how I'm going to dispatch for them for my vampire underlord, Deacon Frost.
Overlord. But
Overlord, yes. Sorry, what did I say?
Underlord.
Well, you never know. Yeah. Sorry, I definitely meant Overlord.
We're there still late.
Anyways, his plan was, I'm going to announce that I'm going to kill you, but I'm not going to have my weapon drawn, nor am I probably going to have it unholstered to the point where you got to take the thing off.
Right.
He gets himself in a position where he gets maced by, again, a civilian. And
it's not real mace.
Not even
that's
real mace.
Exactly, that's the worst part. He's like, that was kind of good. Garlic? Thank you.
Oh my God, that would have been you. Justin getting sprayed in the face.
Stronger. I would have been able. I wouldn't even needed a gun. I would just picked her up and thrown her at another window. Not again.
Justin getting sprayed in the face with garlic. You'd be like, "Do you have any tomato spray? You could spray me in the face with that too."
That's the equivalent of like giving Mario the flower, and then I'd be throwing fire and shit. Yeah, this guy's just a super unlikable character. He's dumb. Yeah. He's just a dumb person. He doesn't realize that there's a car behind him that is the loudest car in the world. Like,
later you mean when he's
when he's following when he's following him and he can see the car. He can see he's like 2 car lengths behind. He's like, everything's fine. I'm gonna go to this blood bank now. It's not like I've got a tail. That is the loudest car in all of New York City. And then on top of that, later on in the film, and this is where I really hate him, is just before Deacon kills him, he goes, but it's okay. See, anytime you end a sentence with C, you need to die in the film. I stand by that. And this guy did it. Second most unlikable character in this film.
I'd like to note that the 2 characters that you do not like so far are villains. So I think everything is kind of working out the way it's supposed to.
I think it's supposed to work out the way. I think it's the director got you right where he wants you.
Yeah.
But these guys are really unlikable. And it's not through their villainous actions, it's through their villainous incompetence.
The line that this is one of those Matrix scenes. So other than the jump scene like earlier, which calls back to the Matrix and maybe some of the the trench coats and all of that stuff, this line that Blade tells her, he's like, this world that you live in is a sugar-coated topping. There's another world underneath it, the real world. And I was like, easily see like that's like something Morpheus would be saying, Then after this scene, we get what it can only describe as like an acid trip of like a car chase scene, which is, you know, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but everything it's like weirdly sped up. You know, in the scene, they've got music playing really loud and everything's really sped up and the cops talking on the phone, but everybody's moving really fast. Really strange, like chase scene. And David Goyer, I remember saying in Blade Trinity, really wanted a car chase scene in Blade Trinity. And he starts the movie off Blade Trinity with a car chase scene because this car tail scene or whatever was like very strange. Like it's a very odd car tailing scene. So they end up at this where does he go? He goes to the nightclub, right? And this is where they both go in together, Blade and Karen. Before this, Whistler gives Blade a UV lamp, which is my second favorite comedic moment in the movie.
Oh yeah.
Where he gives him the UV lamp. He's like, I managed to, cook this thing up. Blade grabs it, lifts it. He's like, still heavy. And Whistler just looks back at him. He's like, well, you're so big. I was like, it's such a great line. And the scene ends after that. I was like, oh man, that was perfect. That made me laugh. So they bring this stuff in and this guy says, do you have an invitation, Cardo? And I always remember that line from this movie because he says Cardo, and he gets thrown through a wall. Yeah. And then we get into this nightclub. And again, I have to say, really uncomfortable. Like this movie is doing things I've never seen before. You've got what are obviously, or maybe not obviously, but like they look like underage, like East Asian girls on stage singing, and you've got like older East Asian gentlemen just sitting there like creepily watching all of this.
Wasn't it a karaoke bar?
No, I don't think it's a karaoke. Because they look like they're dressed as schoolgirls. That's the other thing. They're like dressed as like, they've got the skirts on and everything. And I'm just like, what is this place? Like, what am I seeing? Right. And then so this all comes to play a little bit later, but again, it's just the movie is just breaking like, weird kind of like, again, when I first saw it, breaking these like taboo boundaries where it's just showing me stuff that makes me like super uncomfortable, watching it. Chases this cop into the kitchen, destroys the kitchen again with this guy's face. He's just getting thrown around, just mad destruction of property. And what's funny is that when like Karen comes in after they find the secret passage to like the archives, Karen comes in and gives Blade this look because she looks around first. I feel like this is some kind of running joke where like he's just destroying stuff with, like destroying property. Because she comes in, looks around and sees everything is like all messed up in here. She just gives him this look. She's like, really? Like
here too?
Yeah, like, you got to cut that shit out. Then they go downstairs, they find the archives, and then it brings me to another just insanely creative, wildly uncomfortable, strange moment that I just love this movie for. We meet Pearl, the like 1 metric ton vampire. And I remember reading about this a little bit at the time. The idea was since vampires don't die, they can eat, but if they don't watch what they eat, they'll just get really, really fat. So this guy has just been eating and he can't die. So he just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the original concept, if you can believe this, the original concept for the scene was that around him, there would be bodies of the girls from upstairs that are singing on stage, of basically children around him. Because if he's got to drink the blood, he can't move. So basically he's got to like grab like a body or whatever and drink the blood and put it away. That was the original concept for this scene.
That would have been fucked up.
Like how this is the level of insanity that we're talking about here. And I kind of love it. I love they swung for the fences because not only is this a great action movie, I also think this plays as a great horror film as well. Mm-hmm. So Pearl, what did you guys think of this scene where they're interrogating Pearl?
Justin can go first.
I never understood to make the decision to make Pearl so big, but I guess in light of thinking about it in that way, it's interesting. Like it's an interesting way to do, or it's an interesting way to look at what vampirism looks for somebody that is essentially an overeater. But ultimately the interrogation was kind of weird. Like it seemed almost like it was from a comedy. The way that Pearl would answer with a lie, and it's so clearly a lie. Like, oh,
I love that.
All right, light his ass up, and then he's gonna go into the vault. She's like, but there's nothing in there. There's nothing in there of interest. I'm like, come on, have a little bit of chill. And it's. I always thought it was more of a comedic. It was interesting, I guess. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's interesting the way they blend the comedy in that, with the horrific fucking part of burning him. Well, not alive, but you get what I mean. Cooking him, cooking him right in front. It was just, it was a very weird. I don't want to say off-putting, but I guess going for uncomfortable again. Kind of an uncomfortable way to kind of deliver that scene. It was weird. It was very, very strange.
For me, it was more like a throwback, like Jabba the Hutt.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I didn't even think of that.
Just a fat roly-poly dude just sitting there getting cooked.
That's right. He's got funny responses. You're absolutely right, Justin. I think I agree with you on the fact that they mixed like the comedy and the weirdness of the situation, especially when he's like, he asks him a question and he goes from screaming to, but that's what Frost says, to this like really cutesy voice. And that that didn't make me laugh. That made me uncomfortable. Like it made like the whole thing just made me uncomfortable. And I'm like, oh, this is it's so creative and strange and weird. And that's why that scene stands out to me. I've never seen anything like it. I don't think I've seen anything like that since, to be honest. A scene that strange,
It's very weird.
So
it sits out in it kind of like it stands out in the film as something very unique from everything else in the film. There's no other piece in the film that is that long that plays for comedy as long as this one does.
Right.
The whole thing is just it's a bit. The whole thing is kind of a bit. It's getting information and they're injecting horrific torture on somebody, even though it's a 1,000-pound vampire. But it's certainly played for the comedic beats in it. There's comedic beats throughout it, intermingled with horror.
They blow a hole in the door and they find the archive. I guess like what they called the script of. I've forgotten the name, but basically the book of something. It's like this old vampire book. And there's an action scene that plays out in here where a young woman or a kid, basically, you're meant to think that's trapped in there. And then Donald Logue and his goons show up and she starts fighting Blade. And I thought this was really cool. Again, another really unexpected thing. Like when she starts kicking him like in the side, and even the other thing that sells it is his surprise. Well, I don't know if you see like if you guys notice this, but when she starts kicking him, he's like, whoa, what the fuck? Right? Like seriously. I always like that. I like that moment. What do you guys think of this action scene here that plays out? A lot of glass gets broken. A lot of glass.
Oh yeah. This was, like I said, the action scenes in this movie always make me happy.
I mean, this connects right into, we could talk about sort of like the subway scene as well. Like basically he gets captured. Donald Logue has his little funny moment where he takes his glove off because he had grew his hand back. And then Whistler shows up and gets the great "catch you fuckers at a bad time" line. And basically they go for a run through the subway system. And this train, entirely CG, I think, again, hasn't aged that poorly. I thought it still looked good.
I actually didn't know that train was CG. I actually thought it was real.
Same. I honestly, I didn't notice it myself.
I had no idea that was CG.
The CG that is dodgy now is when Donald Logue gets his face all jacked up on there. It's just, it looks very... Doesn't look good.
The Donald Logue, that scene where he gets his... I actually really like that. I like the idea of the idea.
Watching it now versus then, and you look at it and you're like, that's Not convincing to me at all.
I remember watching a special feature on how they did the train, and they had a bunch of people on. There's actually people on the train, but they didn't have enough money to do like an actual 3D model of a person. So all they did when the camera pans basically from one person to the other as the train is kind of like passing by, they're like, well, these people, they're like, oh, just put it 2D cardboard people. So they show this thing frame by frame, and as the camera passes, you'll see that the 2D cardboard people are always facing the camera. Like as the camera passes by, like they're just 2D like representations of people. And I'm like, that's fucking cool. And especially since like it's such a quick cut, it just gives you enough information to believe that, oh yeah, there's people on the train, but you can't, it's going so fast that you wouldn't even notice. Angel getting his face smushed against the side of the train. And then they get away, and they get away in the most what I think is actually one of the more ridiculous things in the movie, and that's quite a thing to say when we're talking about an action horror movie about vampires and vampire hunters, is he grabs the back of this train and swings onto it with Karen in his arms. Even if he could survive that, I'm pretty sure her neck would be broken. Like, because he's got her like by the waist or whatever. Just like but yeah, no, I actually quite like that scene. This is where she returns the favor on the shoulder, shoulder thing. Anything else about this scene that you guys want to chat about?
I don't think so.
No.
I just, this is kind of where you get a really, I feel like at this point, Whistler's already a very likable character, but this ramps it up. Whistler becomes much more, he becomes formidable. He becomes something that's more of somebody that can actually interact and play in the field versus somebody that's just behind a monitor or limping around somewhere and changing the car's transmission.
Yeah, he does dip in that scene. That was one thing it's so chaotic during that scene with the train going by. He gets hit, falls to the side, and Blade is like, yo, he can take care of himself. And later you see him going through like a manhole cover on the other side. I always thought that was like really, like, I'm not even sure why they took that approach. I guess in order to have this train getaway gag at the end, they could only be carrying one person. So Whistler had to get out in some other way.
Whistler apparently trained Blade, so he's got to know how to do something to get out of there.
Hell
yeah, that's
skills.
right. Yeah. All right, and then we're back at actually the next note I have here is later Angel's getting bandaged up because he got his arm chopped off again. And this is one of the moments that was so unexpected, is the girl that's bandaging him up randomly bites the stump on his arm. I don't know if you guys remember this, but like she's bandaging him up, and because when she does it, I cringe like every time because there's a crunching sound when she does it. I'm just like, oh God, that's gross. And he's like, and he calls her a skis, which I feel like is not a word that's used very often, but yeah, just something I thought I'd point out because even now watching it again, I was like, oh God, it's awful. Dragonetti's death scene. How do you guys feel about the fact that these vampires can throw on a little bit of sunscreen and wear a spacesuit and go out into the sun?
I don't agree with that at all.
No.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
I think that's one of the things that they did that I wasn't a fan of either. Yeah.
I feel like you'd have a lot more vampires out and about in that case, which would lead to overpopulation during the days, and somebody would start talking about it. And I don't think that's very, very good.
Yeah. And I think that,
let's be honest, when do they sleep?
Yeah, dude, they need to sleep.
Get a nap.
Right?
That's like being up all night. He's on a fucking blood bender. Don't need that.
Yeah, blood bender. That'd be nice if like those scenes where they go to do that, like they come back and they're like got heavy, like the puffs under their eyes, like, oh, I didn't sleep last night. Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep yesterday morning.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, they get this great, which I think is a great death scene. I like the idea behind it, where they bring him out there and he's got this great piece of dialogue. Again, a really great idea that they just don't do anything with when he says, have you, when's the last time that you saw like a beautiful sunset? He's like, oh, right. You were born a vampire. You've never seen, sorry, a sunrise. Sorry. You would have seen plenty of sunsets, I imagine. But sunrise, you've never seen one. You were born a vampire. So again, touching on this really interesting idea, but then never really like doing anything with it. And then he basically explodes in this scene, which I thought was an interesting choice. They're just like, what's gonna happen here? Let's just build a dummy and blow it up. That's what's gonna happen.
Light on fire and boom.
That's right. It's hilariously over the top. So then later we go back to the Blade Cave, and Karen discovers that an anticoagulant can do some harm to some blood, which leads to another great comedic moment where Blade's looking through the microscope and she adds EDTA, this anticoagulant, to vampire blood, and it explodes. And Whistler laughs, and I always thought that was a really funny moment. And then we get Whistler's story, which I thought was I thought for the amount of time that Whistler, talks to Karen about Blade, about where he found him, and about his own story, just that small period of time, Whistler, the actor Chris Christopherson does a great job with what he's got. Like the time that he's got, I think that he does sell it. It's not a lot of time, unfortunately, but it is like it delivers what it needs to, and I think it hits those like emotional beats. Any thoughts about those two scenes at all?
No, but I do like the fact that she she uses her science to understand the coagulant and stuff like this. Like she compares sickle cell anemia to like what the vampirism is,
right?
How it can be cured with, or not cured, but like it can be counteracted with whatever coagulant she designed or developed.
Yeah.
So I found that pretty cool as well too. Like the fact that they're trying to use science in a fictional movie with definitely fictional characters. I've never heard of anyone ever meeting a vampire before.
Trying to ground the cause of these mythological creatures in something that is actually reality based. I agree. I think it's a really, really interesting approach.
I agree. I think that the problem with this movie is that it tries to mix the mythological with the scientific. I don't think it's entirely successful in doing that mix, because it is a hard mix to do. But that's not something, I mean, it's one of the knocks I have against the movie, and we'll get into that later, because when it goes to fucking crazy town, when we get to the end of the movie with the La Magra stuff. But so far the mythological stuff hasn't been too overt. Like you've kind of got this urban, like city concrete jungle setting. You've got the science. The only like big mythological part is like just the idea that vampirism exists is really the only big thing right now. The regeneration, the drinking of the blood, all of that. So Blade and Frost meet for the first time on the street, and Frost has this little
Brenda song. I think that's baby Brenda song.
Was that
the actress's real name? I think her name's Brenda Song.
I'm not familiar. Is she in like anything that we know? Because that movie's 1998.
Yeah, I think Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. She's a Disney character. She's a Disney girl.
What did you say? Brenda Song?
Yeah.
It is not her though.
It's not?
No.
Thought it was.
Not.
It looks like her. Like it looks like a double of her. Like
interesting.
Maybe her sister or something. I could be being very racist right now. Let me stop.
No worries. I'd be interested to look that up, because that's 1998. She could very well be someone who's come into like some fame or been in other things that I've seen since then. But so this scene kind of like Frost lets Blade know how he feels about humanity, and I do like his notion here where he's basically just saying, look, we are just a function of nature. humans just have to go, is basically his byline. And this little girl is just terrified this entire scene, and I feel so bad for her because Blade draws his gun, and we get the other very sort of obvious like Matrix comparison where we get bullet time for the first time. I don't think I'd ever seen bullet time quite like this before Blade. But it's not true bullet time in the way that the Matrix executed, which was like with 100 cameras like around the actor or whatever, like, but it is conceptually it's the same thing. You see the bullets fly through the air, Frost dodges the bullets, and again this movie just has people chucking women all over the place because he just flings this little girl, and she is just messed up by this phone booth. Have you guys, like, when I watch this scene, I'm like, she hits the phone booth, and it's not like she bounces off and stops. She goes right through the fucking thing and lands in the middle of the street. And I'm like, and she gets up and she's a little dazed. But I'm like, man, if you went through that phone booth the way it looked like, man, you'd be dead. Like the way she just clobbers that thing.
There'd be a piece of glass to her forehead.
It's a lot of glass.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so, and again, that was another thing. It's like, it's so, the movie is vicious in its action. It's vicious in its horror. And this particular moment was vicious against this little girl. And Blade goes and saves her. And he's like, go home. And I'm like, after all of that, that's all you got to say? This girl just got thrown through a phone booth. Like,
brings her to the sidewalk and tells her to bring her ass home.
Yeah.
Blade also continues to be a menace to society. And this where he starts opening fire in broad daylight with his automatic weapon.
Yeah.
I was surprised he chased the girl down, because at that point, he didn't seem like he really had much of a consideration about human life, given the way that he drives and the way that he just fires on the public in broad daylight in a park where there are children and families probably playing.
Oh man,
I was surprised. I was surprised.
That's funny, man. Yeah, like the phone booth thing I can't get over. It's another scene I cringe at, because he could have just thrown her onto the street. I think that would have been fine. But they're like, no, let's throw her through this glass-filled phone booth because she deserves it, like for whatever reason.
That glass is thick. There's no way she survives that.
No.
Anyways,
so Blade comes back to find that the Blade Cave has been invaded, I guess, in this scene, and Whistler and Karen. Well, Karen has been kidnapped, and he finds Whistler all bloodied up in this chair, and I think the scene mostly works. I think it's hilarious. The only thing I think just doesn't work for me is the fact that Blade is trying to clean Whistler's wound, and he is covered in blood. Okay. Whistler has been tortured to the brink of death. He is covered with blood. Blade, I think, went looking for the smallest piece of Kleenex he could find, and he's like just dabbing like little clumps of blood from Whistler. And I'm like, what are we doing here? You've got that Kleenex, it's just saturated with blood. Now you're just moving it around all over the place. Now you're not doing anything.
He didn't even wet it. It was all just sticky. It was just like
when he pulls it, when he dabs it and he pulls it off, it sticks to the oh man. And I can't stop looking at it for some reason, like whenever that scene comes on. So then you have this basically the Whistler's death. What did you guys think of this?
I to be honest, it's funny, I noticed the blood thing too, mainly because I grew up and still continue to have nosebleeds, so I'm familiar with like having to sop up blood. Not to get too graphic, it's not fun. And seeing the amount that was there, and also the way that he was dabbing it, I'm like, that's not going to do anything. No one's getting clean that way. You need to get some water, apply a little cold compress at the back of the neck. Anyways, but the way that Whistler kind of goes out, give me the goddamn gun.
Yeah.
He almost called him a bitch. Like, there's no way Chris Christopherson didn't almost call him a bitch.
Yeah.
I thought it was good. I thought it was as good of a way for that character to go out, and kind of shocking. You don't see that coming that
yeah.
in what feels like a franchise, that one of the big players in such a franchise could go so early.
Right.
It didn't seem like it was coming, but I mean, it did. And
yeah. Antoine, any thoughts?
I think he went too soon.
yeah,
I think so too.
I think he went too soon.
Yeah.
I like Whistler. I think he's a great character. I think he just went out too soon.
Yeah, I agree.
I would have been okay if he stayed one more scene. Like if he, he wrote or died with Blade at the last scene, and
yeah,
and then he got taken at the last scene. I would have been okay with that. But like the kind of way he went out was kind of like, you need to give Blade motivation. I understood the reason for it, but I was like, he still went out too early.
Yeah. I agree. I think they built a very likable character in Whistler, and I think that's a lot of the reason why. I mean, spoiler alert, but in Blade 2, Whistler does come back. But I agree. I remember watching it when I watched it for the first time. Even now, just the level of damage that was done to him, it's shocking, because like he takes the cloth off of his face, and that initial reveal, it's Blade that's in focus, and he is out of focus. So you can't see all of like anything that's really happened. You just see it's just a bloody. He just looks like hamburger face, like he's just absolutely ruined. So so I think it's still effective, but I agree with you 100%. It just happened too soon.
Yeah.
So Blade ignores the warnings that his blood is the key to bringing La Magra back to this world. And he starts prepping to basically save Karen and kill Deacon Frost. This scene, I just have a question for you guys. It's very meditative. Mm-hmm. This scene's got this music. It's almost like a meditative sound playing over top. And then he grabs this flower or plant and he chops the roots off. Do you guys? I have no idea what this is about. And I've always just kind of shrugged, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a thing. I have no, and I was watching the movie too. I'm like, what is, I'm just wanting to get your take. Does anybody have any thoughts on what that is or why he's doing that?
I got two things. One, he just is not very good at gardening and thought that was a good idea.
Sure.
The other thought is maybe it was representing him completely trying to cut his roots off, the roots that are him as a vampire.
Okay, maybe
it's a stretch. I still don't. I see that scene too, and he does that specifically with his kind of lazy eye, and it's all very strange to me. I don't get it.
Yeah. Wesley Snipes has some very beautiful eyes, by the way. They're very hazel.
Yes, they are
nice looking eyes. Nice peepers he's got. Sorry, Antoine, I interrupted you with my.
No, that's fine. I don't know. I think kind of like Justin, like twofold. Like one, it's him cutting off the roots, but when I first saw it, I thought he was going to use those roots, and I thought there was some kind of special rooted vegetable or something like that he can use to make some kind of special serum to kill these guys better. But,
oh my god, that would have been
that's what made a lot more sense. Like, when I first watched it, like I thought he was making those some kind of special chemical thing.
There's a deleted scene where like he just puts them in a blender. The blender scene.
Him making a smoothie just let's go kill me some vampires.
Yeah, like first go around, I thought that's what he was making. He was making some kind of special thing, right? Why would it be underneath a plant? Why else would you cut the limbs off? But then hearing Justin say that, I was like, it's probably him cutting off his roots of being who he is. And
I guess like with Whistler gone too, like now that Whistler's dead, he doesn't have anything that really ties him. Like he was, because Whistler like basically was like his father figure. Mm-hmm. And like with Whistler gone, like he has no more roots. Like he's fully devoted to like doing this next task, and if he dies basically. I guess I get that. Anyway, so then we get a lobby shootout scene. Again, another very sort of Matrix-y sort of scene. It's not as long as the one in the Matrix, but it is a lobby scene filled with cops, and Blade bursts in and he basically shoots everyone. There's no slow motion in this scene, but it does have one really great shot that's always stuck with me. I always like that, where the waterfalls coming down in the lobby scene. and he's shooting everyone, and there's one cop that's on the ground, and he's holding up the shotgun to the cop's face, and the cop isn't a vampire. And he's like, he's just, please, he says, I just work for them. And it flashes to like Whistler's bloody corpse, and he basically pulls the trigger and blows this guy's head off. And I always thought that was a really powerful moment, because it's true, like these, you know, on one hand, they've done something so horrific to Blade, but on the other hand, these guys are human. Like a lot of these guys are not vampires, they are familiars. So this, and that comes back into play, interestingly enough, in the third movie, where, you know, they use that as a plot device. But it is something that makes you think. It gives you just enough to be like, oh yeah, it's reminding you, the movie's reminding you that these are not all vampires. Some of them are actually human.
Right.
And then we get a really fun hand-to-hand fight where Blade just, you know, gets rid of all his guns again, just to stay in shape for whatever reason. He comes in and he fights these two vampires who also left their guns somewhere and came in with electrical batons. And he kills, I don't know if you notice this in this fight, in this hallway fight, which I think is really well choreographed, and it's cool, it's fun, it's short and fun, but he fights one, he fights the other, and they both get pushed off a little bit. And he does this thing where he's like, and he kind of just like stretches his arms out, like as if he's getting ready for like an aerobics like thing, where that's why I kind of think that it's almost like he's trying to stay in shape, because he kind of has this moment where he's like getting ready to like do some aerobics or something. So anyway, he fights these guys, and then he uses the EDTA on them. And I fucking love this scene. I love how insane this is. And this matches kind of like the Pearl aspect, where it's this gritty realism to this movie, but then moments of absolute like a fantastical horrific things layered on top, like Dragonetti exploding unexpectedly, or like Pearl just being this massive vampire. And then these guys, not only do their heads explode, but they go full like Big Trouble in Little China, like thunder death, where their heads like balloon out and explode, and it's absolutely disgusting, and I love it. You guys have any thoughts on this one?
I love how he walks away and lets
yeah that's right. The blood comes from the bottom, and then the blood comes from the side.
He could have been standing in front of those explosions, it would have been fine. He wouldn't have gotten any blood on him.
yeah that's right. Then we get the next scene, which is oh, by the way, well, what another thing is, the next scene is kind of like I guess Deacon Frost's bedroom. It's a modern sarcophagus. I don't know if you guys sarcophagus, coffin, I guess is the word. Yeah. But you see in the background, it's like this really high tech, basically coffin that basically it comes down and opens up. You see it earlier in the movie as well. It's another really creative thing that I think they did when modernizing the vampire myth. It's like, why would they still be sleeping in coffins? They don't have to do that. If they have lots of money, if they're very influential, they'll just get the dopest technology and sleep in like really opulent settings, you know. And then Blade meets his mother, which is one twist, okay, and then an unnecessary second twist, which has really no bearing on the film at all. And I really think they just, I don't even know why it's in there, that Deacon Frost was the one that bit his mother while she was pregnant and turned her. What do you guys think about this?
Yeah, it was a twist. I don't really have many thoughts about it, to be honest. I thought it was kind of neat, but that was basically where it starts and ends. If it wasn't there, I wouldn't have missed it.
Yeah. For me, it's just another plot point that Deacon Frost is not a very good villain.
Yeah, it's very unimaginative.
They had to add depth to him. That's a very good point. They had to try and add depth to him as kind of a side point. Like, oh, by the way, he's actually a lot more bad in your world than you thought he was. It's just,
it's very unimaginative. I completely agree. And then this is where we take a sharp 180 on this movie, where they go completely to Crazy Town, and we are introduced to the insane mythological elements to the film, which has been mostly grounded so far. We get taken to this unexplained like archaeological dig site, which I don't know where it came from. I think Frost has a throwaway line where he's like, "Oh, these guys forgot where this temple was located," but I guess he's implying that he found it somehow. Whatever. And I think this is where I think some folks are going to get lost here, because you've got the movie changes gears in a big way here in this scene at the temple. The movie doesn't ease into it at all. We get Blade, who is succumbing to his thirst because he doesn't have his serum. And we get what's another really terrific horror scene, in my opinion, in Zombie Curtis, where they introduce another little twist on vampirism, where it's like, yeah, sometimes you get turned, sometimes you don't, and sometimes it reacts differently to different people, and sometimes people just turn into these weird zombie things. And you meet Zombie Curtis because Karen gets thrown into a cave, I guess, here, and he meets Zombie Curtis. And I remember as a kid watching this scene scared the shit out of me. Like, he's basically like a ghoul. Like, this vampirism virus did not do what it does to other people. It basically messed him up, and now he eats anything. And they've been like, it's clear they've been keeping him down there for a while, and they've been like throwing him random chunks of food and people and other vampires and things like that down there. You guys have a take on this?
I liked it a lot. I like seeing that there are other fates that aren't just vampirism after a bite, and that there are weird things that can happen. I just thought it was a really cool idea.
Yeah, they made it seem like it was a mutation.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Like, just because you get bit doesn't mean you're going to be super strong and good looking and have fangs and drink blood and sleep at night and sleep during the daytime.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it looks like he's miserable too, because there's that moment he actually recognizes her, and the way he says her name sends chills down. He's like, Karen. And he's like screaming her name when she's getting out. I was like, oh, it's I thought it was a really good scene. So then we get this kind of where they take Blade's blood. He is freed by Karen because she gets out of this hole with Curtis in there. She gets out, frees Blade's blood by this time has been taken. And we have this very elaborate blood system thing where all of the 12, I think it's like 12 pure bloods vampires are being sacrificed. And this is when one of them is killed for saying something untoward to one of the younger vampires. And like you said, Justin, I'm like, okay, well, what do we do now? We're down one, aren't we? Like, we need all 12 of these guys, I thought, and now we've got 11. So they don't really explain that. She just kills them.
Yeah. Kills them and throws them into somebody else.
Yeah.
Number one least likable character in this film. I can't stand her anytime she's in a scene, nor when she opens her mouth.
Really?
Hate her to death.
Really?
Can't stand her. Anytime she says anything, I'm like, you can't talk. You shouldn't do that.
I actually kind of I mean, this is the only one I would mildly disagree. I mildly disagree with you on, because I kind of liked it. I liked her accent, and I like the fact that it's alluding to the vampires are from different places. They speak different languages. They're like all these different cultures. And that sort of alluded to that fact. But she's also a villain, so you're not supposed to like her.
That's not why I don't like her. I don't like her because anytime she literally said anything, it drove me nuts. I am really going to enjoy this now. I'm like, shut up. Who says that? I don't care if you're a hero, villain, or just some, like, I cannot. That was one least likable character in the movie.
Interesting.
And she almost fucked up Deacon Frost's short-sighted plan completely. She's lucky that they had another guy on deck. I guess he brought spares.
Yeah,
in case this just stupid woman starts killing some of them for no reason.
That's right.
Also, tactically, what is that fur coat doing for her? She's not gonna be able to move well in that. Did you see her dress? It's super tight. It's low, so that means she's not gonna be able to, move around very well.
I don't think she was expecting to fight too much.
Well, then why was she holding the sword, Ethel?
Well, yeah, I mean, she was handed the sword. She wasn't.
No. She asked for it. There's no way she didn't ask for that sword.
All right.
Why
Whatever.
would
Anyway,
Deacon Frost give it to her?
I don't know. He just needs someone to hold the sword. He doesn't have the scabbard.
No. He would have kept it for himself. She said, "Hey, man, you remember how I held your hand during the time where we lit Udo Care on fire?" Unless he was holding Donald Logue's hand. I don't know. Somebody started holding hand. They weren't clear because everybody was wearing the helmet. Somebody hold it outside. Yeah. Imagine they're just watching that, and then all of a sudden Donald Logue just goes out and grabs Deacon Frost's hand, and Frost's like, "What? It's kind of nice." And then he realizes it's a new hand, and he's like, "Ugh."
Oh yeah, it's a brand new hand.
Anyways, I digress. There's no way she definitely asked for the sword.
Your ridiculous digression has reminded me that there was one thing I wanted to mention where Deacon Frost is talking to Karen and talking about describing La Magra being an active god, and he's going to turn everyone.
Yeah. He said the blood god is an active god, which is extremely redundant, but
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So there's a deleted scene here, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, where she asks explicitly, well, if everyone's turned, what are you going to eat?
That was my question.
Yeah. In this deleted scene, I think it's on YouTube and stuff. You could probably check it out. But in this deleted scene, he's like, I'll show you. And he opens up basically a fridge and shows people in like blood bags. Like basically people being kept alive, humans being kept alive strictly for production of blood. And that's it. So it's a cool idea. They filmed it. I guess they just trimmed it for time. And I think one of the other reasons was they thought it looked a little goofy to see someone in a, in a giant blood bag. But yeah, it's cool that they actually thought of that, and they do bring that back in the third movie. It's also like a cool lead into, I don't know if you guys have seen a movie called Daybreakers with Ethan Hawke.
Heard of it, never seen it.
I don't think so.
Oh, I highly recommend it, because basically Daybreakers with Ethan Hawke is that future. It's exploring that future where the dominant species on the planet are vampires, and what the world would be like and how it would be run, and does feature this concept of humans being a very rare commodity. Blood banks are basically the banks, and they contain people who are being kept alive strictly for the production of blood. Anyway, so small little aside there. So we get this ceremony that happens. We get some really, really, really awful CGI blood here, guys. Just really, really bad. Really bad. But it lands on their foreheads. And then they get this. I love this, but I see how this might not work for a lot of people, especially with the grounded movie that we've had so far. But then you get the crazy starts happening, where the souls of these pure blood vampires rip themselves out of their bodies, and they're not angels, they're bats. I always thought it was kind of goofy, but it's like,
yeah, like
it's
bone
like
bats or something like that. Right?
Yeah, they're like bone bats. And I don't know if you noticed this, when they're coming out of their mouths, basically the spirits, it's the bone bat who has a skull, but it's inside the skull of the person.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like a skull within a skull, and then it forces itself out and starts flying around. Man, they just went to crazy town here. I think people's mileage may vary, but I was into it. I'm like, let's do this. Let's get crazy, right? Let's get crazy. So you got these crazy bats flying around. They all fly into Deacon Frost. He becomes La Magra. Blade is freed, has this crazy action scene leading up to fighting Deacon Frost, and eventually he kills Deacon Frost using EDTA, that anticoagulant, and blows him up, basically. So what do you guys think of this whole climax action sequence?
You want to start off, Antoine?
Yeah, sure, I'll go first.
Go.
Yeah, no, it's good. Fight scenes again, awesome. The fight scene at the end when they're the sword battle is fucking amazing. The choreography for that is fantastic. And then also when he cuts those two guys in half, and he wants, oh no, not the two guys, he cuts one guy in half, get his sunglasses back.
Oh yeah, he cuts his head off.
Yeah, or his head off.
Yeah, he cuts it off with the I guess the fishing I don't know.
Yeah,
I
the
call it
fishing line or
fishing line.
whatever it
Fishing
is, yeah.
line.
Yeah.
It's fucking amazing. But yeah, the whole spirit bat thing,
Yeah.
didn't really work for me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I can
I,
see that.
yeah, I don't know how it would work any other way though. Like I can't tell you how I could made it better.
Right.
I don't have a vision for that. But I get what they're going for. Like they obviously all the spirits have to go into one person, and I guess they couldn't use like ghosts or anything like that, but they had to use some kind of energy change or something like that to make him that strong.
Yeah.
The CG in the scene is
dodgy.
The blood is dodgy at best.
Yeah.
That's the one part of this movie that aged horribly, was that
Yes.
final scene with all the blood.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I felt like they could have probably just used like corn syrup and food coloring, and it would have been a lot better.
I think most of the shots of the blood falling on their foreheads is real. It's that the one there's maybe 2 or 3 shots where the camera's going underneath that blood dripper thing, and those things are CG, and the crazy snake blood thing like on the ceiling, and I'm like, oh my god, guys. But again, if you look at movies from that time, there are other movies that use that type of CGI, but they use it way more, like during the entire movie. I think that this one is fairly contained in this scene. It is bad CGI, but it's not all over the movie.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's it for me.
Yeah. One thing I'll call out is the use of EDTA and the misdirection around, and they establish it right away when they capture him, thinking that is his serum, and they don't understand that it's a weapon.
Very cool. I like that.
I thought that was such a good twist, and it ended up paying off in a very stylish way. The way that he throws the sword up, the way it explodes out, using that gimmick, the what is it, the security or the booby trap on the sword itself.
Yeah.
In a direct offensive way.
Yeah.
And the way he catches it behind him, for some reason, holding up his ninja thing like this, but the way that he catches it,
buddy,
super stylish. And also the way that, I'm trying to remember what other part, and maybe I'm thinking of another movie, but the way that he throws the first one and how it goes in so easily, and then the other ones are all of the rest of them except for the last one is that weird kind of
hypercut.
Hypercut.
Yeah,
that's the way I didn't know how to describe it.
Yeah.
Where you can hear that the throwing actions are happening, and the way the camera's just being jerked around on him.
Look who's doing it now.
Whoops. And anyways, the way that, and then he lands and everything's stuck on. It was just, I love the way that it was executed. It felt like something you'd see out of a really neat anime or something like that.
That's a good way of putting it.
I hadn't seen something like that on film before. Not like that.
Yeah.
And then you get the best line of the film of,
let's talk about
some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill, which is a thing I've never seen. I typically don't see ice in a hill formation, and I don't see people trying to skate up it. I understand
ice,
what he's trying to say.
I see ice on hills, like icy hills.
Yeah,
I've never tried to skate up said hill, but I imagine that it is incredibly difficult, if not impossible. Like, I can't see how that would work, right? Like, you can't. So I think the point is that it's impossible, and some folks are just trying to do it.
Some motherfuckers might tell you that they can do it, but they're always trying.
Some motherfucker from the X Games thinks he can probably do it.
You probably can. You just get a good runway going, get real fast.
Guys, I'm not gonna lie to you. The first 10 times I watched this movie because I loved it so much, I had no idea what the fuck he said. There are so many words. Okay, taglines or one-liners in action movies are meant to be short, concise, right? This is so long and so wildly esoteric. I didn't even know what he said for the longest time. Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill. And I didn't understand. I'm like, what did he say? I'm like, I don't know. But he kicks this dart into that guy's forehead. Yeah, I saw that shit. That was amazing. I don't know what the fuck he just said before that, but whatever, right? It was only much later that I decided to look it up. And I read it and I'm like, even after I read what he said, I'm like, what? Why does he say this? Like, it's such a strange line to have. And I swear to God, it's the strangest action one-liner I've ever heard. I don't think I've ever heard another line that's this weird and esoteric. Which I think that's why it kind of has this reputation for being like, when people think of this movie, that line always comes up because it's so weird. It's such a strange line. Couple of highlights from this fight, where he gets his glasses back, and that becomes a thing. Like they do that in the second movie where he gets his glasses back. I love that. That's like a running theme through these movies. Gets the glasses back. He rips out some highlights. He rips a guy's throat out and throws it in another guy's face. So I always like that moment. I don't know if you guys noticed that. He rips this guy's throat out. He's like, ah, and then he takes that chunk of flesh that he ripped out and throws it in some other guy's face and slaps him like right after that. It's great. Another scene where there's a guy on he's so angry. He's looking for Frost. He's yelling, Frost. There's a guy on the floor and he just starts kicking him. I don't know if he starts doing this thing with his hands where he's just kicking him. He's like, Frost, and he keeps kicking him, and he kicks him so hard that he kicks him onto like the next level of the temple. So I would love that scene. That was a great moment. And then the last one that's really fun is that there's one guy he faces off against, but for whatever reason they have this like roundhouse off.
Yes.
Where they're just doing roundhouses.
Terrible.
He's just like,
they're not even close to each other. They're just,
it's just
like competitive dance at that point.
it's like a dance off at that point. Also a great moment. But if you watch carefully, there's a guy in the background and he's just like standing there getting ready to like fight Blade.
He's the breakdancer coming in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's just getting ready. But it's clear that it was a mistake. They weren't supposed to, because I guess he was getting ready to like do his part of this fight, but he's just like in the back getting ready, and he's only there for a second or two. But I noticed it this time around. It was really funny to see the guy just getting ready. He's like, okay, getting ready to get my ass kicked. Let's go. Right. But yeah, that was a fun fight. Sword fight was cool. You're right, chops him in half, the blood stitches him back together. Ugh, it's terrible. And his hand, and he gets an extreme close-up with the hand coming back. It's like,
yeah. And then his crack
cocaine
fucking running around where he's like, my turn. He just starts running back and forth and stuff. I'm like, why don't you just walk up to him? There's a lot of running there.
Yeah, it was a lot of running. And he kills him with the EDTA, and he explodes. I don't know. I just noticed it in this movie as well, because Deacon Frost has a line earlier when he's talking to Donald Logue's character, and he's like, Donald Logue's trying to explain to Deacon Frost how much of a badass Blade is. And he's like, okay, he's got the sword, and he's like, and then he interrupts him. He's like, yeah, he's got the sword. He throws it in the air. He catches it behind his back underneath. He's like, shut the fuck up, and he interrupts him.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he does exactly what he described in this scene. He throws his sword up in the air.
Yes.
And he catches something behind his back like this. And I'm like, that's exactly what he did.
He does exactly what it is. He does exactly. He does. It's like word for word.
Yeah, it's so funny. I never made that connection until I saw it just today when I was watching it in preparation for the podcast. I didn't notice that connection. Right. There was one last. Oh, yes. So an entire other ending was filmed for this. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah,
I think I have. Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah, no, it's not. They tested the movie with that original ending, and they got terrible response from their test audiences. So in a nutshell, what happens is, instead of all of the sacrifice of the purebloods, basically, and Frost becoming La Magra shows up, and Frost becomes a part of this like whirlwind of blood. It becomes exactly what he describes, he says like a hurricane.
Yeah.
Right. And it's this hurricane of blood, and Blade gets caught in it, and he ends up cutting the EDTA and bursting it from the vials, and it mixes with the blood, and basically the whole hurricane dissipates. It's kind of like in the Silver Surfer, Fantastic Four, the Rise of the Silver Surfer, and like not getting Galactus and just getting like a giant fucking tornado. instead, and then having that like tornado just like disappear. That's kind of what this ending was. You just got this gelatinous hurricane of blood, and then it just dissipates and goes away. You can probably watch it on YouTube. It's out there.
With that CG blood, I'm not going to want to watch that.
It's
again.
It's not pretty.
2 minutes of your time.
I wouldn't say it's not worth it. I'm saying it's interesting to watch to see what they came up with first. If that's kind of like your bag. By the way, this is one of the first collector's edition DVDs that ever came out, and it's one of the first ones that I bought along with The Matrix and The Mummy, Brendan Fraser's The Mummy, were some of the first DVDs that I ever owned. And this one was the first one that had special features, making of documentaries, commentaries, the works. I watched so much of that stuff, which is why I know about this ending, because I saw the alternate ending on the DVD. That one I've ground to dust. I just bought a new version of it on 4K because my DVD is just like scratched to hell because I watched it so much. Anyway, so then we get the very end of the movie where we find Blade. He refuses to take the cure that Karen has cooked up for him because it'll take his powers away. And then we find him in Russia, and the movie ends with him attacking a Russian vampire, and we get the end of the movie. So that is Blade. General thoughts, anything we didn't cover, anything you guys want to talk about?
I think we covered it all.
I think we covered everything.
I'm pretty sure this podcast is longer than the movie.
Yeah, because it finished in the background there.
Yeah, it finished in the background.
Yeah. I don't know. I just thought the plot synopsis would be the easiest way to go on this movie. So sorry about the length, guys, but I thought it was worth having the conversation since we love the movie so much. On this watch, I think that all of the problems that existed with this movie back then exist now. It's got some crazy plot holes. Maybe not an extremely strong villain, but I think it's like creativity, the action, the visuals, and just hyper stylization that I think all allow it to play super well even right now. I enjoy the movie. I enjoyed watching the movie even now. I don't think it's really lost any of its luster. How do you guys feel?
It hasn't. It's good as it is now as it was when it first came out, in my opinion. Yeah. I think it could hold a candle to any of the movies that come out nowadays. If they can fix some of the CG issues, and it'll hold a candle to all the new movies that are coming out right now.
Cool. I think it still does. It holds up remarkably well. I think that what's the actor's name that's going to be playing Blade in the MCU?
Mahershala
Ali.
Yeah.
He's got big shoes to fill. Wesley Snipes I feel like he's always going to be kind of that. He's going to be kind of the Michael Keaton of this Blade role from whoever else embodies this character from now. I mean, we've had Snipes, we've had Sticky Fingers was Blade in a TV series, which I'd never seen. But it didn't look terrible. Like it looked like it. I don't know whether or not it was any good, but
I think I saw the pilot. I think I saw the pilot. I remember not being happy with the pilot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sticky. I liked him as a rapper. What group was he part of? Was he part of Onyx? I feel like he was like part of Onyx or whatever. And I used to listen to them all the time. When I found out Sticky Fingers was going to be Blade, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Maybe he might have the look, but like the voice is just, it's all off. But yeah, that's it's something I was thinking about digging up just to check it out and see what it was like. There was one other thing I wanted to bring up, and one of the things that people keep saying about some of our modern superhero films, in particular about Logan and about Deadpool and about Black Panther. They talk about Black Panther being the first superhero movie led by like a black star, and I'm like, well, I mean, like that's not. I mean, I feel like Blade. Yeah, I feel Blade fills that role pretty good. They talk about Logan and Deadpool being like the first R-rated superhero movies, and like this is some kind of revelation. And I'm like, well, no, Blade was also R-rated. and it's very R-rated. And I think that's one of its biggest strengths to me. I think that the stylized violence and gore and all of that stuff is like the biggest strength. So I feel like, whenever someone brings up those facts, I'm like, guys, you got to check out Blade. Like, you got to check this movie out. Feel like you're missing out. That's it, man. That's all I got. I had exhaustive notes on this one, guys. So sorry for being such a nerd, but I had to let it all out. Put it on a recording so that somebody's like, hey man, how do you feel about Blade? I'll be like, yo, just listen to this 2-hour podcast.
I just want to say, like, going into the new Blade with Mahershala Ali, I just want to have Disney do us some fan service and just give us Blade as like Whistler, or maybe Whistler's dead, and then Blade, old man Blade, is going to train new Blade. Like, give us something where Wesley Snipes is still kind of in it.
I would love to see Wesley in the new Blade as like that role, that kind of like
as a make him Whistler. Like, I know you can't have another Blade because obviously that's a very hard concept to reintroduce as another Blade is born.
Right.
But, like, make him Whistler. Make that situation happen for us. Yeah,
I'm on board with that. Yeah. One of the concepts for a sequel for Blade was one that I think would be incredible, is the post-apocalyptic future where vampires have become the dominant species, and basically it's like a Mad Max like scenario with Blade still operating, but it's almost like this resistance, like basically Mad Max X, maybe like Terminator, kind of future Terminator thing, with Blade, clean shaven head. I love the tattoos that come up on the back of his neck, but they were talking about tattoos like going all the way, because I think in the comic books, you know who Tim Bradstreet is? You guys know who that is? Yeah, the artist who did like Punisher and stuff. Maybe he's just a lot of times draws Punisher as Thomas Jane. He's drawn him like photorealistic. Anyway, he did a couple of covers for Blade where he was fully, like, his head was shaven and he had tattoos coming like all the way over his head, like full like covering his body. This post-apocalyptic Mad Max Terminator future thing, I would eat that up. I think that would be amazing.
That'd be sick.
Yeah. But I agree. Having Snipes back as a mentor would be so dope, in my opinion.
Just give us something, like,
some connection,
some kind of connection, bringing it back. Like, just loop it all in somehow.
Yeah.
And how you do it, just give it to us.
Yeah, that's right. And one other thing to note about the new Blade, like, it's probably going to be PG-13.
Oh, 100%.
And I actually don't have a lot against PG-13. There are a lot of horror films that I've seen that are PG-13, or even like comic book films, like the Justice League animated, like the DC direct-to-video animated stuff, the TMNT, even like Batman stuff, animated stuff. PG-13, you can go pretty far with that, and like,
agreed.
And I think that works for a lot of. But I in particular for Blade, I do think the creative stylized gore of all three movies is quintessential to its success, in my opinion. I feel like it's needed. It's really needed to reset it apart, to make it different. So I'm kind of apprehensive about that PG-13 rating, but I'm not going to write it off at all. Of course, I'm going to be like the first in line to see this movie, and I think they can do a lot with it, but I feel like they're trying to do this with one arm tied behind their back.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
I think they can get away with it. I mean, Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a TV show that was on basically with the same concept, just a lot less blood. You can get away with probably a lot without having to go into the gore aspect of it, especially with characters or villains that essentially turn to dust when they are dispatched. So you don't necessarily, I mean, granted, they're vampires that drink blood, so you're probably gonna need a little bit of that, but at the same time, it doesn't need to be overly gory. You can get away with probably quite a bit using just the audience's imagination and some really good disintegration effects. So I think it could work.
Yeah, I agree, but the only thing I'd fire back with is the stuff that's creative that I love about this movie. A lot of it is tied to that creative use of gore. True. Like to that creative use of blood, and where they were willing to go with a lot of the, like I was talking about, those taboo areas that I hadn't experienced when I was a kid watching this. Like they would not be able to go to some of those places on an PG-13 rating. But I agree with you. I think they can be super creative. I mean, even like the TMNT Batman, the violence in that was like, some guy gets his head cut off in that.
Yeah, he does.
Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, you're right. I think that they can be creative about it. I just feel like something's going to be lost.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's all I had, guys.
All right. Yeah.
I think we're good to close it off.
All right, man. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Hope to get the other episodes for the other Blade movies up, because these are all very, very different movies, different directors. And I think that it's really fun to talk about them at this level of depth, because they're so different from each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, this has been Atul.
This has been Justin.
And Antoine.
There we go. And thank you all for listening or watching if you're watching this on YouTube. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day.
Drums.